What's up, my fellow poker enthusiasts? It's Rene, aka the Wacko here, and together with my co-host Adam Carmichael, we present to you the Mechanics of Poker podcast. In this podcast, we deconstruct high-stakes poker players, figuring out what it is about them, how they think, what they do that makes them so successful, with an extra focus on the obstacles they faced and the skills they had to develop to surpass them. Over the years, me and Adam have gained a lot of experience in both reaching high-stakes poker ourselves and teaching other players to do the same. We have bundled all this knowledge together in our coaching program, the Mechanics of Poker, which is the most complete poker coaching product on the market. If you want to have a chance to work with me and Adam so you can get unstuck and make more progress in your poker career, go over to mechanicsofpoker.com to apply. But without further ado, let's learn from another high-stakes player's journey in today's episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Mechanics of Poker podcast. We are joined by the 2022 WSOP main event, Espen Uhlen Jørstad. After having won the main event, Espen has become a regular in the high roller scene, showing that unlike other main event champs, he is not a one-hit wonder, but instead is here to stay and a force at the table to be reckoned with. What stands out when I think of Espen is how calm, collected, and composed he is at the tables. He contributes this to having discipline and good habits with which he has optimized his mind and body to be able to perform to the best of his ability. As always, I'm joined by a fellow high performer, normally the fittest guy on these podcasts, but today we have a serious contender, I'd say. My co-host, co-mechanics of poker coach, Mr. Mindset and Performance, Adam Carmichael. Adam, how can our audience learn, or what can they do to be as cool and collected at the tables as Espen?
That's a high standard to set. I'd say your external state is going to reflect your internal state. So to be calm on the outside, you've got to learn to be calm on the inside. That often means having your expectations in check and being very present in the moment. When you're most calm, you're generally very present, you're quite confident, but you're trying to execute in the moment. And I think Espen from the outside looks like he does that very well. So we'll explore how he's mastered that state over the course of this podcast.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that as well. But before we start, we have teamed up with some partners in the poker industry that, in our experience, help boost your poker career. First one being GTOWizard. If you're a freaking listener of the pod, you know that at least 90% of our guests use solvers to get ahead in the game. And GTOWizard is by far the most accessible and best tool if you want to use GTO to get ahead as well.
We are proud to announce a technological breakthrough. Introducing GTOWizard AI. This powerful technology can solve any custom poker spot in seconds to high accuracy. Unlike pre-solved solutions, this allows you to edit the solving parameters. That means you can modify the ranges, change the stack and pot sizes, customize the betting tree, and automatically simplify and optimize your bet sizes. Brace yourself. The meta is about to change.
So sign up to GTOWizard using the link below, gtowizard.com/mechanics. Get 10% off your first month and join the weekly coaching webinars, of which one per month is with me. Looking forward educating you guys over there. Next up, we have Universal Poker. If you are playing poker without a good rakeback deal, you are leaving free money at the tables. This is where our partnership with Universal comes in. Whether you are making a new account or want to boost your existing account, we can give you the best deals on the market. But what sets Universal apart in today's market is carefully selecting the sites that they work with, only collaborating with sites that have their shit together and that offer clear lines of communication with guys higher up at the site. This line of communication makes them more like personal assistants for players rather than just an affiliate, which in my opinion adds a very big value to the deal. So visit universal.com, link in the description, and be sure to enter code MECHANICS to access the exclusive deals we've arranged for our listeners. Universalpoker.com, enter code MECHANICS. Espen has entered the call, so without further ado, let's start the pod. Espen, I'm happy that we finally got to do this. I believe I first messaged you, I think it was a bit after your main event win. So it's almost like 2 years ago. Very busy guy, but happy we found a day to finally make this happy, especially now with another WSOP around the corner. So welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you. It's not even that I've been that busy. It's mostly that my mind has been very busy. I've had so many things on my mind that I've basically just said no to every podcast request for the last 18 months or whatever. It's been, yeah, a lot going on. So that's it.
Yeah, it turns out that winning 10 million is not just a matter of next day it wires you to your bank account and it's like, oh, happy times, right?
Yeah, there was quite a bit of issues. I didn't get paid out for 6 months because IRS didn't accept my UK proof of residency, and then there was tax lawyers involved from Norway, UK, and the US. That process is still going on, but hopefully nearly finished. So there's been a lot of yeah.
More money, more problems.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sit here and complain about it because it's a good problem to have, obviously, but it has added stress and anxiety to my life, that's for sure. But yeah, not gonna complain.
No, yeah, but it does make sense. And sometimes also we think, I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes you're like, I'm maybe not actually busy in terms of, I'm not doing anything every minute of my time, but my mind feels very busy because there's a lot of things going on. So I can definitely feel you. But for the people, I want to actually start this pod out with like quite of a banger of a question, I would say. I think that you've probably been asked this before, but I'm looking to get a more serious answer and one with a more constructive advice twist, so to speak. How does one increase its chances to win the WSOP main event? We all know and understand that, you need a bit of luck, but unless you have ways to literally increase the chances of winning a flip, it's not what I'm interested in.
Yeah, outside of the obvious, winning a lot of flips and getting delta aces versus ace king in crucial spots, stuff like this. I don't know, like I would probably say that my biggest edge playing a tournament like that is that I wasn't really emotionally connected to the outcome too much. I was pretty laid back and I didn't really have. Of course, you can never like remove all emotions and not have expectations when you go deep in a tournament like this. But I would pretty confidently say that I was the least worried about the outcome when we went into final table, I felt that I had like I knew what I was going to do. I had like an idea of the strategy I wanted to play. And I was confident in my abilities. Like, of course, I didn't know every spot, no one does, but I was pretty confident and I just didn't have any emotional stressors connected to the outcome, basically. I was just there to do my thing and yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine a lot of people will definitely feel the pressure. I remember once I was moved to a final table and I never, or final table, a televised table, and I never had that experience. And then suddenly you're like, wait, but people now see everything I do. So just that already kind of fucks with my mind. Imagine if there's like 10 million on the line. This ability to like handle pressure in big spots, was it something that you think you're naturally good at? Or what have you done in order to stay calm when under such amount of pressure when the spot is so big?
I think it's some resilience that you build up over time for sure, but I was always kind of baseline guy, emotionally I'm not particularly, I'm never like super sad, super angry, super happy. I'm kind of a baseline kind of guy where I don't have a very big swings emotionally like that. I think it's super beneficial for stuff like poker, investing, where you need to make rational decisions. Maybe less of an advantage in real life stuff like relationships and other parts where you benefit quite a bit from showing a bit more emotions and being a bit more yeah, I don't know really, but I remember this from like way back when we were playing like video games when we were younger, like when other guys would like slam keyboards and smash their mouse and curse at the gods or whatever, like if you lost like some important game or whatever, I would always be the guy who was just like, okay, we lost, next game, go again, whatever, it's always like been part of my part of how I am, I think. So definitely an advantage in poker, I would say. And also, like I'm single guy. I don't have responsibilities in life. I don't have a family to support. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have any of these things that adds pressure to the situation. I had myself, and I was already in a good position. Like I was already doing what I wanted to do, and I didn't really have these. I think for a lot of the guys at the final table, or even like final 2 tables, final 3 tables, like this mattered a lot, you know, like this was life-changing stuff, and they were gonna be able to pay down their mortgage, send their kids to college. They had all these like extra stressors, you know, like affecting their mindset. I didn't have any of that. I was like, okay, of course it would be like a sick outcome, and it would be like a big bankroll boost, but it's not going to change anything. I'm still going to live the life that I'm living right now. So yeah, I think that helps for sure as well.
Do you ever experience any sense of pressure? For example, nowadays you play a lot of Triton, high rollers. When you play against tougher opponents, do you ever feel intimidated? Or is that also, from that perspective, like, doesn't do anything for me?
In the beginning I did. I remember like the first Triton Cypress that I played. It was like, okay, Adamo to my left, Linus to my right. Fuck am I doing here? You know, like definitely felt a bit yeah, strange the first time, but you get used to it, of course, and you realize that okay, these guys are actually not gods. They actually have the same maybe not the same leaks, but they also have leaks. They have stuff going on, you know, like it's not they're not unbeatable. And I think after a while I realized that these are human beings as well, and you don't need to be intimidated sitting here. You've studied the game, you can compete, and yeah, kind of just yeah, became more and more natural with time. I do have like some anxiety in that sense playing with these guys, but that's more like an ego thing where the anxiety comes from I don't wanna fuck up a hand in front of Chidwick or Tim Adams or whatever, you know, because I want these guys to think that I'm a good player. I don't want I had especially in the beginning, I had a lot of like this insecurity that I didn't want people to think that I was just some one-hit wonder main event guy that came like and now was gonna like blast off, you know. I wanted people to think that I was a good player. Probably like childhood insecurities and whatever shining through there. I don't know, but stuff like this where I was afraid of like playing hand bad because yeah, these guys were gonna be like, oh my god, did you see like this fucking main event punter?
Is this the
Like...
main event champ? Something along
yeah,
those lines.
Yeah, so I had some of that. I still have some of that, but to a lesser degree now, I would say.
Was that also then one of the reasons why you jumped into like the high roller scene to kind of did you feel like you have something to prove? Because I can indeed imagine that the majority of the world that knows a little bit about poker says, well, it's Espen. Espen is the WSOP main event champ, so he's the best, he's the GOAT. But obviously, you know, as poker players, we kind of know that it works a bit like more. So was kind of that did you get motivated by playing like these high rollers to prove that you were not the one day fly?
Yeah, for sure. And it was also a bit about setting new goals after the main event, because I've had a different goals throughout my poker career, you know, like I started playing in 2004, and back then my goal was just, I didn't care about money. Like, I didn't have any ambition of like retiring or anything serious, you know, I just wanted to have enough money to travel when I wanted to and like party with my friends and stuff, like simple things, you know. And then the goal was just to beat the next guy, beat the next guy, beat the next guy. I was treating it like a video game because I came from video game background. So I was just treating it like another video game where I wanted to level up and beat the next guy and whatever. And I didn't have any emotional, like I didn't think about the money, you know? And then I went to university for 6 years and I had a real life job for 1 year. And when I came back to poker after that, now I suddenly understood, okay, money has value. Like I should actually take this a bit more serious and like try to use this for like actually try to build some wealth as well. Not just like try to beat the next guy or whatever, but actually like, yeah, take it a bit more seriously. So for a few years then my passion was like to retire myself, retire my mom, you know, like create some actual value in terms of financial stability. But then after winning the main event, that part was again like, okay, now I have this money, but I still love playing poker, but it's not going to be the same like logging back online and playing like the Bounty Builder 215, you know, as it was before. So now I kind of need to find new goals again. Like, what am I going to do now? And then I kind of decided that, okay, it would be cool to compete like at the very highest level. And try to see if we can actually stack up against these guys, you know.
How does your strategy change going into a field like Triton compared to a field like main event? To kind of maybe go back to like my first question, is there anything strategically? And I also heard you actually, I looked up some of your content before this podcast, and I heard you also talk about kind of the meta strategy on like a meta level. Maybe you can also elaborate on that. How do you approach a tournament, like a big, softer field tournament, different than, for example, a tougher lineup in the Triton?
Well, I've only played the main event twice, but in general, I would say, like the first time that I played it, the year I actually won it, I wouldn't say that I had the best approach to it, honestly. I was playing it a bit too. I was thinking, oh, you get all these like gifts all the time, so you can just like play super safe, don't take any risk. At least in the beginning of the tournament, I was playing a bit like this, which I wouldn't necessarily say is the best approach. But I do think that you have to pass up on a lot of smaller edges in these tournaments, like the main event, for example. Like in Triton, like if you're playing a tough 50k Triton, for example, like these guys aren't going to give up too much. They're not going to just hand you their stack randomly, you know? So you kind of have to take, like, if you have like a 4-bet shove spot with ace-4 suited, you probably just have to take it because you're not going to find like any amazing spots later, you know? While in the main event, maybe you skip that spot because in an orbit or two, this guy from Texas is just going to absolutely gift it to you, you know? So it is a bit different in terms of the variance you should take on in these tournaments, I would say.
Yeah, so for example, if you would look at a solver and you see, okay, in this spot, the bottom shove is a6 off. Maybe a6 off is not the bottom shove in a WSOP main event, but maybe it's ace10 off. Because there's a chance that
Yeah.
Mr. from Texas is going to give you a stack next hand, so surviving to next hand has more value.
Shout out to Mr. Texas. Yeah, no, I think I think for sure. And like also if you look at the solver, if you actually like look at the EV of the shove, like all these bottom shoves, they're gonna make literally like nothing. They're gonna be like break-even shoves, right? And if it's a break-even shove in theory, then for sure just skip it in these softer fields. Also, it matters a lot, of course, like who you have behind you, because sometimes like a6 might be the bottom in the solver, but in real life it might actually be like a giga print because everyone is going to fold so much tighter who's left to act, you know, like maybe you're on the button and the two blinds just are going to fold everything. They're going to fold ace jack off if you shove, you know, so maybe at that point, like also don't go with the solver, but actually think about who are we playing against here? What are we doing, you know?
In terms of, you know, if we're talking about leaks in approach, what do you think are like common mistakes that people make when they play? Like, for example, we got Scoop coming up. Big Scoop is kind of a similar leak that you can think of, or what are like some common leaks that the mid-stakes players have on Scoop?
I wouldn't say I'm the best player to talk about this right now. Like for the last year or two, I've played Scoops and W Cubes and Sundays, but I haven't been grinding online as much as I did in the years prior to the main event, right? So I like in terms of what leaks people have, I like for a series like Scoop, for example, I would say that it's probably overloading on tables and just autopiloting too much, not paying enough attention to what your strategy is and what you're trying to do. You're just like loading up. Oh, you get FOMO. Like this tournament has such a big guarantee. I have to play it. Suddenly you have like 16, 20 tournaments and you're usually playing like 8. And now you're like, okay, yeah. So I don't know. I know people have very different approaches with this, like Pads, for example. He just loads up like infinite tables and he can handle it for some reason. I don't know. Like he can still like find power jams in like unnatural spots where like he can do like crazy stuff. But for me, like if I play 20 tables, I'm just autopiloting a lot. I find myself. Maybe it's just because I'm getting older and slower. And I remember when I was younger, I could play like infinite tables, but then again, like the strategies were a bit more simple back then. Competition was easier. So I found it easier to play a lot of tables then. Now, I think competition is a lot tougher. I also play higher, and my brain probably works slower because I'm getting older. So yeah, I don't know. Depends. If you're 22 years old and on Ritalin, you can probably just play like 24 tables, no problem. But for me, it doesn't really work like that anymore. So
how does one determine which tournament to skip and which to play? Like, I'm sure nowadays for you, maybe it's a bit easier. You just play everything that's high, and naturally there won't be, I guess there will be way more lower buy-in offer than higher buy-in offer. But what are some advice that you can give when you say, okay, don't load up on too many? Which ones should they skip and which ones should they definitely not skip? What are kind of the criteria to look for?
I mean, it kind of depends why you're playing, right? Like, are you playing to compete or are you playing to provide for your family? Like, in terms of ROI, of course, you play, probably don't play like all the highest buy-ins. They're going to be very low ROI for the most part. Especially on some sites, maybe the structures are a bit faster, which is going to lower your ROI a lot as well. So yeah, play good structures, like big fields, you know, like high guarantees in terms of the entries. Preferably freeze out or one re-entry tournaments is better. So you don't have to play against Malacca 8 times and pads 7 times and European 12 times, you know, like if you're gonna have to beat these guys over and over to actually get somewhere, it's of course gonna toughen up the field a lot. Yeah.
You mentioned like the approach to poker, if you want to have a high ROI, if you want to provide, or if you want to be competitive. I think you also mentioned you experienced this yourself, right, in your poker career, where you were just focusing on beating the next guy, and then you were like, well, maybe I should accumulate wealth. How does then your approach differ? Because I can also see, or I also had times where I would be like, okay, I'm gonna stop focusing on like the more competitive games and I'll try to bump up more. But actually, I was zoning out more. I was playing less. So actually, in hindsight, maybe a little bit more competitive games would have triggered my A game. Therefore, actually, I would have made more money. How did that look different for you? The approach, I'm gonna beat the next guy, to okay, actually, I'm now gonna focus on making money. What did you then do differently?
What did I do differently? Well, it's such a long time ago. Like, honestly, it was a different climate. Like, I played Heads Up Cash for 6 years, maybe. And I remember, like, maybe, like, I would say maybe, like, the first 3 of those years, I was really hungry, trying to figure stuff out and, like, talking to people about strategy and trying to get better. Last 3 years, I kind of just bum hunted, didn't study too much. I was kind of like, this is why I ended up going to school as well, because I kind of lost passion for it, or I didn't have like the same drive anymore. So I don't know. Tough question, what changed? Like when I got back, I think I was just a bit more mature and I just looked at the game in a different way. Like I was pretty young back then and I was very immature as well, I would say. Like I had spent most of my life just sitting in front of a computer, playing video games. And yeah, I don't know. I was very immature. So yeah, I just didn't have the same respect for the game or the opportunity that was in front of me. I think a lot of people that were good at poker in 2006, 7, 8 kind of regret that they spent so much time partying, playing World of Warcraft, whatever it was for them, you know, like all of these time sinks that me, and other people, like we spend so much time doing these things instead of taking poker seriously, right? I definitely regret that many times that I just, well, I regret it, but at the same time, like there's nothing to be done because I wasn't mature enough to see the opportunity and to grab it. But yeah, it's what it
Yeah,
is.
it's like with regret, but also with understanding. Because I mean, when I started as well, if I should have probably dedicated a bit more, and then could have made way much more money. So I definitely understand where you came from, but it felt so easy, right? You sit down, you get some money. It's like, oh, I want money, and then you go spend that money, then you go sit down again. You think that this is like infinite, that this is how it's going to be. And also when you're younger, you know, or at least for me speaking, I didn't look so far into the future that I remember once I was with a couple of buddies of mine and we ran into like a guy who played already very high stakes. And he looked at us and said, hey guys, you do realize the opportunity you guys have on your hands right now, right? And I looked at my buddy and we were both standing in the club like, okay, let's go party again. You know, it's like no, it didn't. It only came later that we understood, like, oh wait, this is actually a pretty big opportunity. You actually
Yeah.
used to play cash games. I think you already mentioned Heads Up Cash. I actually first heard about you. I think it was a series on YouTube from Unibet. You guys were trying to make $1 million or something. A guy looking like Jesus was also in there. Remember that guy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had like a vlog project. I was playing. Actually, I had already started transitioning to tournaments then, I guess, but I was playing cash games. Like, so as I said, like I stopped playing in 2011 maybe or something like that, or played less and less. Before that, I was playing a lot, and then I went to university for like 6 years and worked 1 year, maybe from 2010, something like this. And after working, I came back to poker in 2017, and then I was playing cash games. I started playing like NL 200, NL 400, around there, on Unibet, which was incredibly soft back then. Probably still is, I have no idea. But it was unreal how soft it was. Like, I came back to poker after basically not studying. I was just, yeah, as I said, like bum hunting some heads up cash and not really taking it very seriously for a lot of years, right? And I came back and I immediately started winning, which is, yeah, says a lot about the games, I think. So I came back into cash games and I played cash for maybe 1 or 2 years. Mostly just playing in the Unibet games because they were so variance free. And yeah, I didn't have much money at that time. So I kind of had to like build a bankroll and do it like in a safest way as possible. So I basically built my bankroll playing Unibet Cash, and then I was streaming on Twitch as well. So I got a sponsorship with Unibet. So I had some side income from that as well. And yeah, just built from there, switched to MTTs a couple of years later. And then I was living with two Estonian guys, Rauno Tahonen and Rauno Kivilu, both of them named Rauno. And we were living together in Tallinn, Estonia. And we were doing this. We kind of had the idea it would be cool to remake this 2 months, 2 million project that was like infamous back in the days. I think we called it 1 year, 1 million. We are going to try to make
I
$1 million
recall
between
something
the
like that, yeah.
three of us. In poker and crypto, I think was the idea. And this was like peak bull market times. So I think we were a bit delusional about how easy crypto was. We definitely got wrecked pretty hard in crypto over the next 6 months or whatever. So that did not contribute to the final number in a positive way. Yeah, spoiler, we didn't make it. I think we probably made like 300K or something between us. not amazing by any means, but yeah. Yeah, what was the question? I'm just ranting now. What was the question?
No, I think
That was the first
I
time.
didn't really
That was the
ask a
first time you
question,
saw
to
me.
be
You said,
honest.
yeah.
I didn't really ask a question. Actually, the question that I was gonna ask based on your experience, but why did you switch to MTTs?
I think I just saw more future potential in it. I thought like as poker online is getting harder and harder, and maybe there was a bit of a worry at that time, as there is now, as there's been forever, that cheating is going to become more prevalent. Maybe it's going to be harder to cheat in MTTs because you have so many variables in the game. You have different stack sizes, different parts of the tournament with different ICM effects. You have all these things, right? Different payout structures. So I figured like probably tournaments is a bit more here to stay. And also just way softer format, I felt like. Cash games were getting like kind of tough. Maybe not on Unibet, but at that time I was like moving up a bit in stakes, and I was playing like some 510, a little bit of 1020 on stars and stuff like that. And the games were pretty tough. So I figured maybe tournaments is like more long-term, better long-term idea. And also I found it a lot more fun to play tournaments, really. Cash games were starting to feel like a bit of a grind to me, which is I think what kind of killed my passion for the game in the first place when I was playing Heads Up Cash. Like in the end, it kind of just became a grind. I was just like, okay, rinse and repeat. And Cash Game had become a little bit like that for me. So I think I needed to like do something to give me back a bit more passion again for the game. and MTTs seemed like a good way to do that. The two guys that I was living with, the Estonians, were also playing MTTs. So yeah.
Sounds like a strategical novelty is definitely a way that you get re-triggered or re-motivated into the game.
Yeah.
How do you make sure nowadays that this strategical novelty is present so you remain motivated? Or is just the competition that you face on a daily basis enough?
Good question. Good question. Like, these are struggles that are kind of present over the last couple of years, where after winning the main event, a lot of people were asking me, why don't you just fuck off to some beach destination and enjoy your life? You know, like, play some poker for enjoyment, but don't. Why do you want to sit in front of a computer all day and study Sims to try to prove something to someone? Like, why do you care? Just enjoy your life and yeah, enjoy the spoils of all the hard work you put in for last years, you know, like you're the lucky one, you got it, you know, like just enjoy it. And part of me wanted to be like, yeah, actually you're right, why am I doing this? Like, I don't need to prove anything, like, but then there is this insecurity inside of me that whispers in my other ear that no, you do need to prove something, you do need to actually. So I don't know, it's a constant struggle for me. And yeah, I don't know. It's also a part of it is like, now I'm in a good position to play a lot of poker and do a lot of stuff in poker. First of all, I have some momentum from winning some tournaments over the last few years. I have some recognition. I have some following. Some people watch when I put out content and stuff like that. So I have like some opportunities for sponsorship income and stuff like that. And I've also dedicated a lot of time over the last few years to become a reasonably good poker player, so I can make quite a bit of money just from playing poker, right? So it does feel like now, if I just go to whatever beach location and live life, that I'm leaving a lot on the table, which feels selfish as well to some degree. I don't know, like, for me, I grew up in Norway, and we didn't have a lot of money. Like, my family, we didn't have a lot of money. Of course, in Norway, you're not like, the government is like they take care of you. So even if you don't have a lot of money, you're not on the street, you're okay. So we were always okay. But like, I really feel like now that I could just like keep pushing and keep working and like keep grinding, and I can make a lot of money, you know, and support my family and do all these things. So there's, I don't know. Yeah, it's
You
a
feel like
struggle.
it's a sense of like you have this opportunity, and because it wasn't there in the past, like you have to take it. Like it's like you cannot say no.
Yeah, and I'm also not oblivious to the fact that I'm incredibly lucky to be in this position, right? Like, insane coincidences for me to meet the right people at the right time that has helped me get to where I am now. Incredibly lucky to win this tournament, that tournament, especially the main event, of course. But all these tournaments and whatever, I'm like unreal lucky to be where I am. And it feels kind of, I don't know, it just feels like selfish, and I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. I
I,
mean, this is clearly something that I'm like constantly thinking about, and I haven't really clearly spent enough time thinking about it, because I haven't figured out what is right, what is wrong here. Part of me wants to relax a bit more. Part of me wants to keep going and really like maybe start vlogging again, you know, maybe,
I liked
you
the
know, do
vlogs, man.
this,
I
maybe
was a
do
bit
that.
sad. I was a bit
Yeah.
sad to see that they stopped.
Yeah.
I really like
I
them.
kind of
I think
enjoyed
they
doing it
showed a
as
very
well.
good insight in terms of what does it look like, you know, to travel the world playing poker.
Yeah, and I kind of enjoyed making them as well. It is just one of those things where it takes quite a lot of effort in terms of headspace, and it's not cheap to make them. And if you don't really have any ROI on it, like sponsorship income or someone who's paying for the vlogs, it's kind of just you're doing it, yeah, for no reason, kind of. Like, the
Guys, we
reason
have to
is
hit the donate button on the vlogs of
no, of course. No, I'm not saying like I'm, yeah, like, if someone offered me a sponsorship now to restart the vlogs. I'm not sure if it would be a thing for me, but yeah, maybe. I'm just saying, like, I don't know, all of these things that you do outside of poker as well. Because I've done a lot of different content in poker. Like I was streaming, I was vlogging, I've done like different things. And I remember when I was streaming, the reason I quit streaming was that I felt that I couldn't be the poker player that I wanted to be if I was streaming, you know? Like if you're streaming for 8 hours, 5 times a week or whatever, trying to have energy, headspace, time, whatever, to put in enough study outside of that to actually be like top player, I just don't think it's a thing really. Which is the reason you don't see anyone doing it. You don't see Mikita, Jason Kuhn, Chidwick, any Tim Adams, any of these guys. You don't see them streaming on Twitch or vlogging or whatever. Why? Because it's not really a thing. I
No,
honestly don't
headspace,
really
right?
think it's a
Right.
thing.
You mentioned your headspace. Like you already need enough headspace to play poker.
Yeah, it takes a lot. It takes a lot for sure. And maybe you want to do some stuff outside of poker as well, you know, maybe have like, I don't know, kids, wife, dog, commitments. I don't know. I don't know anything about any of those things, but
You're
some people
describing
do.
my life, man. Kid, dog,
Yeah.
commitments.
Yeah.
So you mentioned like that some people say, why don't you just go to the beach, and then they said just play poker for fun. Would you be able to play poker just for fun? Because if I hear that and I talk about myself, I find actually poker the most enjoying and the most fun when you're really at it, you know, you're reviewing your sessions, you're looking to get better. That process of like, oh wow, like strategical novelty. Oh shit, you know, I can do this, I can do that. You put it on the table, you execute it, you see it working. That's what gets me fired up. So if I would just be sitting there and trying to enjoy, my brain would automatically be like, hey, this spot's quite interesting. Maybe I should look up if this and this is a thing. Like it probably won't stop. So just playing poker for
Yeah.
fun enjoyment, I wouldn't be able to do it.
I doubt it would be purely for fun. I think I would always, like, even if I took a step down and decided, okay, I'm going to play like 1Ks to 5Ks, you know, stuff like this. Probably still I would like review hands, discuss strategy. I just wouldn't be like omega try hard, you know? I think there's like a difference there where, yeah, I don't think I would ever just like raffle around and like truly play for fun, you know? I would still always try, I think. I love trying. Yeah, it's kind of the reason why I stopped playing video games over the last 1 or 2 years as well. Like before this, I was playing like quite a bit of Dota, Counter-Strike, stuff like this, but now I haven't touched it for 1.5 years because I'm just so bad at the games now. And it really sucks to play when you're really bad. Like, sucks when your team always has to carry you and you're just like, I don't know, it's not so fun anymore then. I
Especially
don't
with
like to
online
play stuff
gaming,
if I'm
that
bad.
like you get like a 12-year-old kid screaming to you in the mic, like, "Hey, Espen, what the fuck?" And it's like, "What? I'm getting beaten by a 12-year-old kid. What's going on?"
Yeah, yeah. No, so yeah, I think it's, if you're gonna do something, I like doing it right, you know, and I like trying when I'm doing stuff. So yeah.
Exactly. That's kind of what gives the enjoyment. And you hear that quite a lot. I think a bit more true in the MTT world, because you kind of have that like, oh, I hate poker, I just want to make a big bink and kind of get out of there. I feel like in cash it's a bit less because it's a bit more of a grind. But I personally never really felt that way. But I also feel like if you play poker really sort of hating it and hoping for a bink, you know, if we talk a little bit like law of attraction, right, spirituality, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there is some to this law of attraction or whatever. There was a girl who I was trying to date a few years ago, and she forced me to read this, The Secret. I got like halfway through it and I couldn't finish it. I was just, no. The author was talking about like this. He made an example where, like, if you were driving to your workplace, if you just imagined hard enough that your favorite parking spot was going to be free, when you got there, it was going to be free. And I was just, no, stop. Like, I agree, you can visualize stuff and you can, like, I don't want to say manifest because, yeah, I'm so over that whole thing. But I do believe in visualization. Like, you can visualize technique, and there's like a bunch of evidence from sports science and whatever about this, right? Like, that's a big thing. But Yeah, anyways, big rant, whatever. That wasn't where I was planning to go with that. But anyways, so in terms of like hating poker, wanting to get a big bink and get out of it, seems like a very, very bad idea and very bad place to come from, right? I think the thing that makes poker so enjoyable is if you can just play without, yeah, you just love the game. Like you see most of the people that are at the top, they do just love the game, right? They didn't come into it because they were gonna try to make infinite. And I know I'm like kind of contradicting myself now, because I said when I came into poker after working, I had more respect for money and I was trying to make money. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, like trying to make money. It's a reasonable thing. But if your only passion for the game is the money, you don't really have any love for the strategical concepts or anything like this, it's going to be really tough, I think. Like for me, if I played a big hand and I start like deep diving into the solver after to see if I fucked up or not, or what's going on here. Like I love that process, like that puzzle process, you know? It's like a video game, right? Like my favorite video game series when I was a kid was Zelda, The Legend of Zelda, which is like a lot of puzzles all the time, you know? It's like bit of like a combat stuff, but mostly puzzle solving, right? And those puzzle games I always loved. And poker is very similar. Like when you start deep diving into the solvers, it's very similar to puzzle games, I would say.
Adam, I'm curious. If you hope enough, does indeed a parking spot is available? Can you give us like some evidence? I remember, by the way, Mr. Conor McGregor, big fan. I heard him say that he also read the book Secret and he loved it. And I think he contributes actually a lot of his success to like manifestation and stuff like that. And I remember him saying that he was in his car. I hope the park was free, and then he said it was free. Obviously, it's confirmation bias usually, but to which degree is there truth, and how can I know you do also believe, but I agree. Like the secret, basically, it tells you that the universe is just like a shopping online shopping site, right? Everything costs zero money. You just click buy and you have it. Kind of that idea. Maybe they try to sell it like that. But what's like the truth and what's not so true? Maybe you can educate the
Tough
audience.
question. Tough question. It's like, what's the rules of the universe? I think a lot could be fooled by randomness in terms of those parking spaces. But at the same time, there's definitely an element of attraction that goes on. If you think about it in terms of putting energy into something, thoughts are energy. If you put your thoughts towards something for long enough, you're putting energy into that thing. That leads to your actions alignment with it. Yeah, there's definitely forces going on there that are going to increase your likelihoods of events. Now, when it comes to where that can be applied to manipulate our physical environment, we've got to kind of take in a lot of factors. One was if I imagine a car space, but then 50 other people also imagine an empty car space. Are we all competing for that one space? Does the universe open up a new car park? Like, it's one of those things where we can go around in circles trying to figure that out. I think we've got to just understand the basic concept of put your time, energy into things that you want. I think McGregor's a great example. He seems to manifest every single thing he wants in the world with just like kind of, he decides he's doing it, he does it, but also he takes action every day, and he's a driven guy. So you've got to meet that kind of intentionality with your actions as well.
What happens then if you, on a day-to-day basis, feel like you hate the game and you are hoping for the bink? What's kind of the energy you put out then? What kind of happens? What's the negative? I assume it's negative. What are kind of the negative consequences, or maybe the signs?
Well, you're creating a lot of resistance to the outcome you want. All right, so that's going to lead a lot of you feel like you can take action from any emotional state, but if you're negatively coming into your grind and you're hoping to bring something to get yourself out of a situation, you're basically creating a lot of negative energy and resisting the thing that you actually want. If you really think about it, you're almost like pushing away the thing that you want. So you end up being less receptive to opportunities, less receptive to the thing that you actually do want. And yeah, without getting too far down the kind of ropey road of where this kind of goes, it's basically just creating like a obstacle to what you want. I think all of us can agree, no matter what your beliefs are, that if you put your energy into what you want instead of what you don't want, you're going to increase the likelihood of getting that thing. Whereas most people, if you look at their thoughts throughout the days, a lot of trying to get away from debt, trying to get away from bad situations, trying to get that bink to get them out of what they're in. So it's all these kind of thought patterns are often occurring around what people don't want, and then trying to change things. So yeah, I think if we could be conscious of that and try to put our thoughts in alignment with what we do want, we're going to create less resistance and a more direct path, which leads to more actions and more congruency to what you want. So yeah, I think that's the main concepts.
Like, of course, if it leads to action, that's great. Like, if it leads to action, and that's where all the benefit comes from, right? In my opinion, that's where the benefit comes from, if your manifesting leads to action. But it's actually very interesting to hear your perspective of this, because I know where you live, and I know that where you live, there's a lot of people that don't want to put in maybe the effort. They just want to manifest it. They just want to think about it until it arrives in their life, you know, or whatever. So yeah, that's interesting. But yeah.
Yeah, I live in Bali for reference, and a lot of people in Bali have a very spiritual background, and they go quite far to the extreme end of they can manifest anything from a beach or without any work at all, and a million would just arrive in their bank account just because they had a little thought that it would. So yeah, I definitely go more to the action camp with a intentionality and kind of vision behind that. I think if you can pair the two, I think there's no right or wrong concepts. There's always a gray in the middle and a merger of concepts. And when you take one to its extreme, you end up kind of missing the kind of big picture. All right, I want to go into your journey a little bit. So you arrived on the main poker scene, the kind of global poker scene when you won the main event, but your poker journey started way before that, I think around 2004. Talk us through some of the big steps you had early in your career and what led you to transition into going back to university, which we'll touch on as well. So that early career, what was the kind of main stepping stones there?
Yeah, so I was playing a lot of Warcraft 3 back in the days. And like from Warcraft 3, there was one of my clanmates that started playing poker, and he kind of told me that like you should try this game out. It's very cool. You can make money. It's very fun. Blah blah blah. I started playing, and there was a lot of older kids in my hometown as well that was playing the game. They were like 1 or 2 years older than me. So I started playing some home games with them. Started playing some free rolls online just to learn the game. Fell in love with the game like very early, and just ordered like all the best books, which was at that time like Theory of Poker by David Sklansky, Super System 2 by Dale Brunson. Like this is like very, very in the beginning. Like these books are now for the most part complete dust, of course. Like Theory of Poker probably has some good stuff still, because it's like fundamental stuff, you know, but a lot of these poker books are now, of course, very obsolete. But yeah, I bought all the books, grinded through them, read all the forum posts. Yeah, watched training videos, did everything I could basically to get better at the game. And yeah, just went kind of all in on poker for some years. I think my clanmate sent me like $50 on PokerStars, and I think I won like a $3 tournament kind of early for like $300 or something. And from there, just, yeah, never had to redeposit again. Just didn't have really big downswings at all because the game was so easy back then. I played fixed limit for the most part for the first year, maybe 2 years. And if you just played like, if you just had like an opening range, you knew like what kind of hands you were supposed to play from different positions and a bit about like seeding strategy, you were printing. So you just like didn't have swings back then. I think there was something crazy. I think I didn't have a losing month for 7 years or something. Something ridiculous like that. You know, you just couldn't lose if you tried to, if you had good bankroll management. And yeah, it was just kind of easy. And of course, like a lot of people back then just saw poker as like a online ATM. You could just log on and click some buttons and collect money, which is why a lot of us also didn't take it that seriously and didn't really capitalize on it, because we thought it was like an endless source of money. Like, yeah. But of course, as we touched on before, it's not really the case anymore. Anyways, I switched from fixed limit hold'em to no limit hold'em 6-max cash. Played sit and goes for a while, played tournaments for a while, ended up in heads up cash games, played that for 6 years or whatever. Yeah, kind of quit. I played poker every year after quitting as well, but not a lot, just enough to supplement my what is it called? Like the money you're getting while you're studying, like the government gives you money for like food and rent and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know the English word for this. Anyways, I just played poker a bit to supplement, to supplement for this and to live a bit more comfortable lifestyle, but I wasn't really trying. I studied for 6 years, I studied 3 years of food science in Norway, and then I went to Copenhagen to study brewing science. So I was going to be like a beer guy. I was very interested in beer for a few years. Ended up working in a Norwegian brewery, like as a brewing scientist, mostly working in laboratory, analyzing beer, making different beer styles, stuff like this. And then I quit my job, moved to Budapest, Hungary to start my own craft brewery. That was the idea. I was going to play poker on the side to like basically pay for this craft brewery that we were starting. But at some point I realized, okay, I actually have to choose now. Do I want to do this craft brewery or do I want to do poker? Because both of them are obviously big projects, and I was streaming on Twitch at the time as well. It was like early in my Unibet streaming days. So I figured I can't really do both of these things. It's too much of a time sink. And beer felt like it was always going to be an option. I can always do it later. I have the education, I have the knowledge and whatever. Poker is kind of an opportunity that's here and now. Like the game is getting tougher and tougher every year. I was already making like quite a bit more money playing poker than I was in my job in a brewery. So I figured poker is probably the safer option, also gives me a lot of freedom. And yeah, so kind of went back all in into poker. Broke up with my then girlfriend living in Budapest and moved to Malta with 3 other poker players instead. So complete change of lifestyle. And yeah, I went from like being in a relationship, working like a 9-to-5 job in a serious like kind of corporate structure life, to now living with 3 other guys in Malta, clicking buttons for a living again. So complete shift of mindset, lifestyle, very big shift. As I said, just played like NL 200, NL 400 for a few years, then switched over to tournaments. Had a lot of fortune, I would say. I didn't really have big downswings. I remember I had like one big downswing when I switched to tournaments, but that was very self-imposed and I was very aware of the risk I was taking, I would say. So at the time, I probably had net worth of like 200K, and I lost like 100K taking shots in tournaments. But I always knew that if I go on like a big downswing, I can just grind it back in these Unibet cash games, because my graph there was just straight up because the games were so soft. So I always thought like, okay, I can take some shots in tournaments and like treat it as like a learning experience, kind of. Like I was playing 5Ks without selling action and stuff like this, which looking back, obviously like not the brightest idea, but I think at the time it was a reasonable thing to do. I also had like a very flawed perception of tournament regs. The perception back then was that if you were a cash reg, you knew how to play poker. You understood poker at like a quite deep level. While these tourney guys, they didn't have a clue what was going on. They were so bad, these tournament guys. That was the perception, I feel like, back then, at least in the cash game community. So I think I was a bit like, I thought I was better than I was, for sure. I was completely, of course, clueless in a lot of ICM spots, a lot of short stack situations. So I probably thought I was winning, and probably a lot of the tournaments I was playing, I was probably losing quite a bit, looking back at it. But I think that's what keeps poker so popular, and everyone just thinks they're better than they are. It's such a classic thing in poker, I think. And I was definitely a victim of that back then. But yeah, then tournaments kind of, I started learning more and more about tournaments and started taking that a bit more seriously, and had quite early success, I would say. So had like quite an easy rise in tournaments. Very lucky to just, not have too many swings.
Hi guys, Rene aka the Wacko here with a quick Mechanics of Poker 2.0 announcement. In our program you will get access to 80 plus hours of content in which we will explain you all aspects needed in order to become a more successful poker player. Now one of these of course is the technical aspect of the game, in which I'll be explaining you all the mechanics behind poker strategies. we'll be talking about GTO, exploitative play with an extra focus on the why behind certain strategies and why the population has certain leaks. And to increase your win rate even further, we've recently added a river bluff and bluff catching section so you can increase your EV when those pots become very big. Our mindset and performance coach Adam Carmichael, he took care of the mental game and performance section of this program, in which he will teach you everything you need to know in order to break through limiting beliefs, better handle your emotions, break free from tilt, and play your A game more consistently. And last but not least, we've added the management and optimization section in the program, in which we will give you various tips and tricks to make it more likely for your poker career to succeed, and how to continuously improve as a poker player. Now, on top of that, this concept is continuously evolving based on feedback and suggestions we get from our community. Next to all this content, you will have access to our exclusive Discord community, monthly live Q&A calls, and one-on-one coaching session in which we are going to be reviewing if you have been implementing the stuff that we teach you in the mechanics of poker correctly. So do you think you have what it takes to master the mechanics of poker? Go over to mechanicsofpoker.com and maybe you will get a chance to work with me and Adam and make more progress in your poker career. But for now, without further ado, let's get back into more goodness in today's episode.
Now, you mentioned when we asked in the questionnaire that you didn't have any rock bottom moments. Then as you were telling your story there, you mentioned having a 200k roll and like losing 100k of it, like playing some shot taking some tournaments. And for some people, that would be like a very big story. They'd be like, I lost half my roll. And there'd be like a kind of negative connotation around that. For you, just kind of brushed past that, no big deal. I was making money playing cash. So for you, there's two questions within this. One is, what do you think's allowed you to have a smooth ride in poker in terms of your approach to the game? And what allows you to take relatively big losses and not frame them as a loss?
Good question. I guess it comes to this like emotional disconnect that I mentioned before, that I didn't really, because I said in the questionnaire that I didn't have any rock bottom moments. Like I didn't have any big like emotional impact on me, you know? Like losing half my roll there, going down to 100k. The way I remember it today, at least, was that I was like, okay, fine, I'll just like take it easy with the tournaments for a while and just grind it back up in cash. I always knew this was like a reasonably high likelihood thing to happen if I play these buy-ins. They happened. Okay, we rebuild, we go on. That was kind of it. And I also had like a big loss in crypto before winning the main event, which was kind of similar feeling, where I lost like a third of my net worth, which was now like quite a bit higher. And I lost like, so I lost like, no, I lost 2/3 of my net worth actually. Not 1/3. I lost 2/3 of my net worth. Most of it was in crypto. And at that point as well, it was kind of similar feeling where, okay, I have to readjust. I have to play lower buy-ins that I was planning to play now. But I wasn't like, I don't know. It also happened in the middle of a series. It happened in the middle of May. So not the best timing in terms of like keeping your head focused on the games and whatever. But I remember even then, I wasn't really like rock bottom, basement, you know, like, yeah, it was fine. So I don't know, maybe I've had more swings in my career than, looking back at it, I think I have. Just that didn't affect me too much. Maybe that's just it.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I think the ability to reframe things or not to frame things as a negative is obviously a big skill you have. I think I remember reading your Instagram post around this time when you had the big Luna crash and you lost a lot of your role, and you were being very vulnerable and sharing like what your kind of plans were going forward. This was before you won the main event. I remember thinking, wow, this is very level-headed, but also, yeah, it's quite vulnerable to put yourself on the line that you've lost a part of your net worth, and now you're going to have to adjust your approach to poker going forward. But it seemed like you did it from a very just calm place, which again, like it's a skill set you've built. You mentioned you built resilience over time from being around poker, and also you're quite a level-headed character in terms of you don't go too high, too low. But yeah, I think like the highs, lows, rock bottoms, a few players would have mentioned these events as like peak rock bottom moments in their lives, where you just kind of went, meh, I've had a smooth ride. Smooth for you might be a bit of a up and down for another person. So I think they're skills that you've obviously formed. I want to talk now about you being a high performer. So when I think about Espen, I think high performer, very thinks a lot about the lifestyle factors that go into performing at the high level. What are some of the things you feel cultivate high performance for yourself and you've shown up as your best self? And does that differ in an online environment compared to, say, a live series?
Yeah. So I think for me, this is, I don't want to sound too repetitive, but it all stems down to childhood insecurities and egos, and like how you channel that into doing good things, I think, for me at least. Like, I think that's a big part of my success. And I also think it's a big part of this resilience that we spoke about before, where, so my adult life has been pretty easy, I would say. Very little downswings in my adult life. It's been very like one big upswing for the most part. But my early life, my childhood and teenage years were maybe the opposite, I would say. Like I didn't have like particularly easy childhood. I was surrounded by a lot of alcohol and drugs when I was younger. Like my dad was alcoholic, drug dealer, like a lot of, it was kind of messy times. Some parts of my childhood. And I think maybe this has made me a bit more resilient to what seems like minor problems later in life, where you start like comparing, yeah, some stuff that would affect people. If you've had like the easiest life ever and you've never had any trauma, any like difficult situations or whatever, if you face minor stuff later in life, they're probably going to affect you quite a bit, right? But if you started off by having a lot of emotional trauma, a lot of difficult situations, I was also like very, like during elementary school, high school, I was like a little weird fat kid, you know, like no social antennas, very weird, anxious little kid. And obviously not a popular kid at school. And I think that combined with like not having the easiest time at home and all of this, I think it kind of creates this resiliency later, where if you run into problems later in life, you're kind of just, they kind of don't hit you the same way, I think. And I think there's a lot of evidence if you see like the, if you go back to the all like people who channel their insecurities and childhood issues and egos and stuff into doing good things. I think there's quite a bit of evidence of this, like the people that were like the jocks that were crushing it in high school, the popular guy who like got all the girls, who was like the captain of the football team or whatever, pick your classic cliche scenario, right? A lot of these people maybe don't have the same drive later in life to prove something, while the nerds, the guys who got picked on, the little fat guys, or the guys who are like in the chess club or whatever, maybe they have a bit more reason later in life to prove something. They want to make up for, they want to prove to the jocks that were bullying them in 6th grade, you know, that I'm not this loser that you called me, like, you know. I think there's a lot to this, and I think that has been like a big part of my success in poker. And in you mentioned like high performance in terms of like getting in better shape and all of this. Like I mentioned, I used to be like very out of shape when I was younger. Now I'm in like reasonable shape, and I think that's like also just based because of this, that I got picked on for being fat. Now I'm trying to get in. Now I'm trying to have a 6-pack to prove them wrong. You know, it's so, yeah. I came from not having any money when I was younger. Now I'm trying to make all the money. I used to not like all of these things, you know. It's so, like if you do like some psychoanalysis or like self, if you look a bit into the past, it's sometimes kind of easy to figure out why we do certain things. It's like a lot of it just stems from childhood stuff, right? And I think that was a big part for me, that I'm channeling this childhood stuff into into my adult life and trying to use it for something positive. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the main thing, like that ability to channel it in the right direction, because other people would go through similar experiences and it would overwhelm them. They might not build that resilience. And yeah, when I think of resilience as a skill, almost everyone I know who's mentally tough, who's got a lot of resilience, has gone through hard times. You almost build character resilience through adversity. And it's quite a shame that that's the case. But if you have a quite sheltered life or an easy life, you're probably not going to be resilient because you haven't built those character traits. It's like building muscles in the gym. You can't get those without lifting the weights. So yeah, I think resilience, you've definitely built that. And then you mentioned this kind of need to prove something. I'm sure we all experience this to some degree. And depending on how your childhood went, you might have this more or less. Depending on how you want to impress your parents as well. That's a big one for trying to prove things. As you've started to achieve a lot of the things, so like you said, you wanted the success, you wanted the good, better body and lose the weight. You've started to, like, from the outside at least, like, kind of prove these things already. What happens that next level? Do you still feel like you tap back into, I still want to prove something? I know you mentioned going back into the kind of high roller scene to kind of still prove you weren't a one-hit wonder. But on a deeper level, do you feel like you're transitioning your motives from having to prove to other people why you're doing stuff to a bit more intrinsic? Because I feel like at some point we can transition out of that. We can see our operating system, we can see what's driven our past behaviors and how we've utilized that as a fuel source, and we go, awesome, it's got me to where I am. But then we can start thinking, okay, right, now I'm here. Now I'm at where I want to be. I've proved everyone wrong. All right, what do I want to do for me? What do I want? What's my kind of goals? Have you, do you feel like you're transitioning into understanding what Espen wants and what his goals are going forward?
That's definitely the next step of the journey, I would say. I'm definitely not there yet. I still have stuff that I'm dealing with, and yeah, I don't know. I'm not there yet for sure. Like this year, my focus is going to be a bit to try to land and to remove some stress and anxiety from my life. Like, because before winning the main event, like as I said, my adult life was big upswing only. I didn't have much stress, anxiety. I felt pretty resilient. Like, I think you mentioned like a lot of people that face adversity, it becomes overwhelming. And for me, it was definitely that as well when I was younger. Like in my teenage years, this was the reason I was playing all these video games, right? Like why I was in Azeroth playing World of Warcraft 14 hours a day. It wasn't because only because I thought it was a great game. It was, of course, like my escape from the outside world, right? I think this is very common. I'm very happy that I chose video games as my escape, since there are a lot of worse ways to do this, I think. But yeah, now, like later in life, it's been like before winning the main event, I knew exactly what I was doing, where I was going, what my goals were, how I was going to reach them. I was living in a grind house in London with some fellow Norwegian pros. Shout out to Prebz, Jonas, and Ben. We were living in a grind house. This was during COVID. This was actually like I would say, the most formative years of my poker career, because while the world was in shutdown, and for most people, this was like a pretty traumatic time, or for a lot of people, right? People lost their jobs. It was like not a great period for the world overall. I would say for me, it was like for my poker career, at least, it was a very good time. Basically, I was forced to reduce my travel to essentially zero. We were locked in this house in London where we had nothing else to do really than work out, study, and play poker. That was it. So during the COVID years, I would say, like, I was also like living with Prebz, as I mentioned, who was like one of my idols in the MTT world. He was like always like the best MTT player from Norway. And living with him and getting to talk poker strategy with him like every day, study with him and like just be surrounded and see how him and the other guys I was living with as well, who were all like very hard workers, very hard. Yeah, they had like good mindsets for becoming successful. You know, they would just like every day just study, play, do the right thing. You know, very motivational crew to live with. So during those years, I improved a lot, and it was very, how to say, like during these years, I just loved it, the process. You know, I loved the process. I had no stress, no anxiety, very easy. I would say that after the main event, my life has kind of turned upside down in that sense, and I've had a lot more stress and anxiety after winning the main. which I don't want to call it like a negative thing. It's just part of it, is just what it is, and it's natural, I think. Of course, I'm super happy that I won the main event. It did change me in some ways, where I'm just now starting to trying to land a bit again, you know, in terms of these anxiety levels and stress levels and whatever. I think you mentioned me actually, like so I had like this health scare or whatever I should call it, like 3 months ago when I was in Bali, actually, where I was trying to sleep. It's like midnight. I'm in bed listening to a podcast, trying to sleep. I'm super relaxed. I don't have any stress, anxiety, whatever. I'm just in bed, relaxing. Suddenly, my chest tightens up like super hard, and I'm struggling to breathe, and my chest is super painful. And I'm like, okay, what the fuck is going on? So I go to the hospital, and they do all this EKG and all these heart tests. They can't really find anything. They give me some like muscle relaxants and whatever and send me home. And they said that they thought maybe it was like some muscle spasm or something like that, because I was working out a lot in this period. But so I posted about this on Instagram, and a lot of people messaged me that it sounds like a panic attack or anxiety attack. And after I read more and more about it, I started to think maybe that was it, actually. Because even though I wasn't in this period, like in this period, I was stressed and anxious more than, yeah, I've been. I had a lot of stuff in my head that was floating around. But in this moment, I wasn't stressed. I was trying to sleep, you know, I was very chill. So I didn't really think of panic attack or anxiety attack as an option. I also never had issues with this before, so I didn't really think that could be it. But reading more about it, it seems kind of likely, since I have been dealing with all these things, like as I mentioned, with like the payouts and the tax stuff and investment stuff. And there's like a lot of stuff that I've been like churning through after the main event. So yeah, like now this year, my focus has kind of been like, especially after this episode, where I kind of got like a wake-up call that, okay, maybe you need to actually like take a bit more care of your mental health and not try to do everything at once, and yeah, land a few projects before you start new ones, you know. And yeah, that's kind of where I am right now, where I'm trying to, yeah, get back into the state where I was before the main event, where I was just happy, thriving, like grinding, doing my thing, you know, and not, yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? So for you, like from the outside, we can see you won the main event and all these opportunities become available. And it seems like the dream scenario that everyone wants. But at the same time, you can see how it just changes your whole kind of ecosystem of life, where life is so simple. You're in a grindhouse, you play poker. Now it's like, what do I do with my money? Should I invest here? Should I invest there? Should I play this high roller event? Should I? All the opportunities that are available that seem like good problems, like just overload the mind, because there's no clear answer. I'm sure you could make an argument if you do pros and cons. Should I go to this stop? Yes, I should. Should I invest in this? Maybe I should. And all of these are taken up like kind of real estate in your heads. And all of a sudden you had a very simple life, sit down, grind. And now you've got to kind of deal with challenges. And if you look at a lot of celebrities, especially, I always feel a little bit sorry for anyone who gets famous young. Like, say you're 16 at Justin Bieber and you're a mega star at like 16. How on earth do you like process what you want in life with the opportunities that are available? It just must overload you. And you see a lot of, obviously, people who get famous turn to alcohol or drugs to kind of numb out a bit of the things that are going on internally. So for you, obviously, you've found ways to deal with it, but at the same time, there's lots going on internally that's creating this maybe panic attack or stress response where your body's almost like, I don't feel in that relaxed state. So you mentioned from there you want to get back to how you're feeling in 2022 or before the main events. What are some of the things that help you to get more balance? I know you're big on health and your routines. Maybe talk us through some of the habits and routines that you feel are most valuable to you at the moment to make sure you're putting your health first.
Yeah, so I used to have a lot of good processes in my life that I've kind of fallen out of. And I've fallen out of them because I've been more stressed and more anxious and whatever. But of course, it should be opposite. This is actually when you should be doing a lot of these things, right? For example, meditating. I used to have like a good routine for meditating. journaling. I used to do daily journaling like twice a day. Stuff like this that I don't really do anymore. And I actually just ordered like a physical journal yesterday. Gonna arrive tomorrow, I guess, or the day after. So I'm gonna restart that. And like it was a friend of mine actually who recommended this journal. It's not. So the journaling that I've done in the past has been like a gratitude journal where you write down like 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things you're gonna do to make this day great, whatever, stuff like this. This journal that I ordered now was a bit more deeper and a bit more self-reflective and like if your mom called you now, like what would you love to tell her? Stuff like this, a bit more deeper stuff, and like yeah, I don't know. I didn't look fully into it, but it kind of like I'm gonna force myself to get into a bit more of the same habit that I used to have in terms of this yeah, taking a bit more care of my mental health and also just like not start any more projects, as I mentioned before. Because it's not only that you have opportunities, it's also when something like this happens, people want stuff from you. Especially like it slowed down a lot now, of course, but like the first month, the first 6 months after winning the main, there was a lot of incoming, right? In terms of people who wanted your attention for media stuff or investment stuff, or people just asking you for money straight up. Like I got so many messages from people just like, hey, I'm going through a tough time. My kid is sick. I lost my job, this, that, whatever it is. Here's my account number. Can you please transfer me 1K, 5K, whatever. There was a lot of stuff like this. And a lot of these messages are probably scammers who just come up with sob stories and like ask for money. Some of these stories are probably people genuinely struggling. I found it really tough actually to most of it I kind of just ignored. Sometimes you get messages from like I'm from a small city in Norway, like 23,000 people or something live there. And I got some messages, people asking for money from people in my hometown, people that was like common. Like I look on Facebook and like we have 6 common friends, like my mom and my uncle and some stuff like this. And I'm like, fuck, I don't know. Like a lot of this stuff as well is really, really hard to decide actually. Like yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of challenges that I hadn't foreseen that, yeah, came to the surface after winning. That gave me both anxiety and stress and all these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel anxious now just talking about it, honestly. It's yeah, but it's what it is. Yeah, you help the people that you feel like you should help, like family, friends, and whatever, and you can't help everyone. You can't answer every message that you get, and you can't even read every message that you get. I stopped reading these messages for a while because it was very similar pattern, right? They had lost everything. They were in very bad situation. Can you please transfer me money? And if you every day like just churn through these messages, you're gonna go a bit crazy. I think you're not gonna be able to be happy. So yeah.
Yeah, it's unforeseen problems for sure in terms of like the things that are pulling on your energy or pulling on your kind of attention span. And yeah, it's one of those things where at some point you've got to shelter yourself. You can't take in information from everywhere. You can't take in people's requests and yeah, kind of bad situations, and you're not the savior to those. So yeah, I didn't even foresee those kind of issues. And yeah, as you mentioned, like just life became more complicated, like more going on. At the same time, you're trying to reinvent yourself, decide what your next chapter is. You've got opportunities, but also like the people asking you stuff of you. And now you must be in that stage where you're like, right, I just want to get clear on what I'm doing. Internally, there's obviously a lot of stress in the system trying to figure out the big questions for yourself as well as where to go. So yeah, really good job on your part to hopefully come to the side of that. I know you're still working through certain stuff, but yeah, sounds like you're getting more to a better place right now. I want to talk a little bit about mental health overall, because we on that topic. In terms of like being a poker player, especially an online grinder, it can be quite lonely at times, and you can feel pretty isolated, especially if you're grinding alone. I know you're in Vancouver now with pads, and you've had grind houses in the past as well, which you mentioned. Have you ever experienced loneliness in your poker career, or being online a lot, grinding? Have you ever felt a bit disconnected from maybe your friends or life overall?
Yeah, it's actually something that I've thought more and more about in the last couple of years as well. And I think I've felt this a lot, especially in times of success, like winning big tournaments, and you call your mom, you chat to a couple of your friends who are there to celebrate with you, and then you look around and you just think, fuck, like, is this it? You know, like, is that it? Yeah, bit, yeah, let's get a bit vulnerable, I guess. Yeah, like, so for the last couple of years, I've felt, because I've been single for quite some years now, and that has maybe been like the biggest part of my loneliness thing, that I haven't had a partner throughout these years where I've been able to share the ups and downs. I think that's actually something that I've neglected quite a bit. Because I was so focused on my poker career, and I was like, it's a really hard lifestyle to have a girlfriend in, was what I felt like, at least, because I was living in Europe, so I was playing online till late at night. I was traveling a lot. I was working a lot. I didn't have that much time to focus on a partner. So I felt like maybe that's just not going to be a part of my life right now. Maybe I'll just date casually and, like, yeah, fulfill my intimacy needs through like shallow relationships here and there, and then kind of neglect like the whole deeper relationship thing. And I think it was actually quite a big life leak, and something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, that I need to change, and I should probably devote more time and energy into actually establishing like some deeper, more solid relationships again, because it is quite a lonely life, I would say, if you're just traveling from poker stop to poker stop, and then between you're grinding online. And I'm surrounded by people all the time, you know, at these stops. Like, I have friends, I have family, like, it's not like I'm alone, but I still feel quite lonely at times, just for not having that someone like really close to you that you can share these ups and downs with. I think it's something that I've actually, realized more and more the value of in the last couple of years, and especially in times of where things are going really well, winning big tournaments, and you don't have anyone to really share it with, you know. So I think that's something that I'm going to be hopefully working on over the next.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that and being vulnerable there with that, because we all seek deep connection, whether it's with our friends, with a loved one, and at times we kind of prioritize our own goals and what we're doing in life. Well, we all do to some degree. We've got this innate drive to pursue what we want, but on some point we get to a point where we want to experience things with other people. We want to have those. If someone to share the ups and downs of life, I think that's what you mentioned as well. Like, yes, the downs you want someone to speak of. Sounds like for you, probably you're pretty good during the downs from this conversation. But the ups in particular, like, that's where you want people around you who you're super close with to experience life with. Like, if you do everything, I've run some thought experiments. If like it was just me on the planet and no one else, what would I be doing with my days? And I'd be like, wow, like that's such a, I don't even know, because nothing would be that great. I would sit and watch some sunsets. I would go around walking around, but I don't know what I'd do because there's no one to share it with. Then you put like 5 people on the planet that I like. I'm like, wow, now this is going to be the best thing of all time. So it's like, understand like that people are really important, and in certain phases as well. I don't think there's a way to look at, like, it's been a leak, you said. Maybe during that phase, going all in a poker the way you did was the best way to like get your life to where you want to be. And then from that vantage point, you're like, oh, now I'm here. What's the next kind of phase? Do I want to share this with more people? Obviously, you're in Vancouver with Pads now. You're sharing with a good friends. So yeah, I think it's trying to figure out, like, at each stage what I need. I'm sure a lot of players struggle with this as well. Poker players struggling with relationships. Shout out to all the girlfriends and wives of poker players. It's a tough gig to sign up for, especially if you're doing online and live like you do. It must be challenging to meet those demands, either joining the traveling or waiting at home. So yeah, hopefully going forward, you can find more balance. I think that's the main thing. Find that balance of time into relationships and time into to what you're pursuing. So final question I want to ask on these kind of topics is around risk. It feels like you're very good at managing how much risk you take in life overall. Talk us through like how you've been able to kind of build your mindset to calculate risk in a good way. Because going from, say, the main event, it would have been very easy for you to kind of blow off a lot of money in big high roller cash games, massive Triton high rollers, which you have played a lot in. What makes you able to make good decisions with your risk management, especially now you're in a situation where you could easily take on more risk than you're ready for?
Yeah, I think for me, this comes back to, this circles back into the mental health aspect of things, right? Where I have a lot of friends in poker who love the risk, they love the variance, they love spinning it back, spinning up to millions, losing it all back, spinning it up again, losing it back. Like they, or I don't know if they even love it, but they keep doing it. For me, that seems like a nightmare. I would not want to do that, you know. I don't like this. Like, yeah, I'm kind of a, like, you wouldn't think so since I lost like 2/3 of my net worth in crypto, but I'm kind of a nit when it comes to these things. Like, like now at least. Maybe that has changed a bit, but now like I play all these Tritons and whatever, but I usually sell a lot of action, you know. I don't take massive variance in my life anymore. I don't feel like that's particularly helpful, especially now since my mental state is already fragile and I feel like my mind is a bit all over the place. And even just having this convo now, you know, I feel like I don't feel like I'm myself, you know. I don't feel like I'm a relaxed person who can like coherently talk about these subjects. I feel like I go on these random rants and my mind is a bit all over the place right now. So hopefully we can do a recap of this podcast in a year or 18 months, and maybe I can be a bit more coherent if I've landed some stuff in my head. But yeah, no, so I think like adding a lot of variance on top of that and taking, yeah, just, I don't think it would be good. And I don't think it is good for most people and their mental health, you know, to swing big chunks of your net worth every month. Or yeah, it just doesn't seem like I don't think we're built for it. I think some people are more built for it than others, but in general, I don't think it's a particularly healthy thing to do, to swing ludicrous amount of money like every month, you know. It's, yeah. So yeah, like early in my poker career as well, I was super nit with bankroll management. I said that's why I never had like a losing month, because I would never like, oh, I'm gonna suddenly start playing 25-50, you know. Like I would always like have like 100 or 200 binds for every level before I moved up, you know, and always following these systems. And yeah, I'm a big nit in life in general, I would say. And yeah, with bankroll and stuff as well, pretty, yeah, nitty or sensible, however you want to look at it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with you because you've got like kind of two sides of your kind of coin, where on one side you're really good at taking risk in terms of if you lose a large chunk of money, like the crypto stuff or the short ticket MTTs back in the day, it doesn't really affect you. You're quite resilient to risk. And one part of taking risk is the ability to handle the downside. I feel like you're very good at handling the downside. But on the other side, as you mentioned, it creates so much stress. Like to put yourself at risk, you're literally putting yourself in a kind of very high stress scenario on a frequent basis. And for you, lowering stress, I think, is a big part of what you're trying to do. As things are getting more complicated, you're trying to simplify more. You're trying to make good choices, but not add extra stresses on. And yeah, I agree with you. I almost like scratch my head a little bit at the people who consciously put themselves in high risk scenarios over and over and over again, and they come out of it like over like a few trials and errors, and I'm like, oh, now you've learned your lesson, and then boom, back in the next high risk avenue. I'm like, okay, here we go again on the roller coaster. But some people like the thrill, they like that, they like the high wins, high loss scenarios, they live for that kind of that kind of lifestyle. Whereas myself, and I think you as well, live more for like that calmness, that inner peace and that doesn't come from these kind of high risk scenarios. I'm interested in you right now, Rene, in terms of how your approach to risk has changed over the years. How was your kind of risk tolerance coming into your poker career, and how has that evolved for you over the years?
I think I was naturally quite risk averse. And early on in my poker career, I went broke a couple times, and that did not help, right? I only got even more risk averse, I would say. At some point, I was just at a very bad place, was in a lot of makeup, debt. Actually, I was so bad at that point that it actually helped, because I was like, I can sit here worrying about this, but it's better to just let it go and focus on what I have control over, and that's just trying to grind. Because like also, I even considered like quitting poker and then maybe paying it back with a normal job, but I was like, this is gonna take me infinite amount of years. So I was like, and I think I was doing sessions with Jared as well at the time. Figured that I was already down so much money, I could probably add some extra to the bill, and maybe it had a positive outcome. And there, I think it really helped that I would just let it go and be like, listen, my life is sort of fucked up right now. There's nothing that I can do about it, so let's just start grinding. And then I grinded it back, basically playing mid stakes because I touched higher stakes and I kind of burned myself. And I would remember for many years, I think that experience has cost me a lot of EV. And I would say even to this day, yeah, I wouldn't take on too much risk. I remember when I had my CFP, or when we started the CFP and I started to buy action, it was actually had some similar experience to what Espen was talking about, that suddenly, you made some money and it's like, wow, what am I now going to do with this money? Should I invest in this? This opportunity comes around, and then you think about it, and I was like, oh, you guys are going to play this. Oh, I guess I should now buy action because I have money, right? And that's what people around you do. So you start buying action. You have no fucking clue what you're doing. And I remember suddenly I lost like quite a big part of my role as well. But it was not me playing. And I feel like, especially when you lose parts of your role because you buy pieces and other people are grinding with your action and stuff like that, it's no longer within your control. Like if I lose a lot in a session, at least then the next day when I go, I can take a break that day, because I don't want to feel the feeling of lose. But when you just have action out, the people are just shooting and you have action, it's no longer within your control. I remember I had to call Jared again because I was freaking out a bit. I think it was EPT Barcelona, I believe. And then there were like the people I invested. Yeah, Barcelona normally great time, and I had some money, so I started investing, and everyone kept on losing. So that was not that was not great. But I feel like a lot of these experience, I feel like some people can just take on more risk than others. Some people stress out less than others. I'm a bit more risk averse myself. Definitely always more like steady Eddie. I think what Espen always like, the 100 buy-ins for a stake and then immediately selling action if I only had 90 buy-ins, for example. I was very, very, very deliberate and then slowly grinding my way up instead of taking shots. Don't think it's the best way if you look at what's the optimal way to grow your bankroll. So I would say it's probably a leak, but it's not a leak that if you take on a lot of risk and when you lose, you freak out, because then. So I don't know, to be honest, I don't know what the optimal risk is. It's very dependent on the individual, I say. I guess I owe you an apology, Espen, because I have indeed stalked you after you won the main event. I was like, hey, we need to get Espen on the pod. Sounds like a good guy. And I also knew you already before that, right? And you said, I got overloaded with messages. So my apologies for overloading you with messages over the years. Also, my apologies for starting out the podcast. Say, you don't want to win the main event, more money, more problems. Obviously, it is sort of true. And like I said, I have experienced that as well. It's always a bit tough, like after Adam had a conversation like this about topics that are, I would almost say are the most important, to then switch to other topics. But usually it's my job as well to talk a little bit about the technical stuff. So I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned. You were living in a grindhouse. It was one of the times that you enjoyed poker the most, right? During COVID, with a couple of Norwegian guys, one guy named Krabs, who you mentioned that you learned a lot from.
Perhaps.
A lot of our audience is very motivated, but they
Krabben.
usually lack ways or good efficient ways how to study. And I remember you talked about, hey, these guys, they showed me how it is to get to the top in poker, right? Every day they would study. What did you learn from them? And maybe we can touch also specifically on like, how did you study to improve your game?
Yeah, so the guy you mentioned is Prebs on Stars. Preben Stockan is his name. He was one of the first guys in, at least from my knowledge, that started like really working hard with Monker Solver, who was like kind of a new software at that time where people were trying to figure out how to play preflop. Pio had been out for some time and HRC had been out for some time, but Monker was kind of a tricky one because building sims in Monker wasn't easy. It wasn't like something that anyone could just like hop in and start doing, building sims in Pio, bit more intuitive. Also takes some training to do it well, but Monker is like a different beast. And Prebz was one of the first guys who like actually worked a lot with Monker. So he had like pretty sophisticated pre-flop strategies, I would say, compared to the ones that I'd been playing before. I'd been using like charts from, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but one of the training sites online, you know, like, yeah, they had like charts you could like buy or subscribe or whatever. And these charts were maybe not so sophisticated as the charts that were coming out of Monker Sims. So learned a lot just from like, oh, actually, if you have Queen Jack suited in the small blind and cutoff is opened, maybe you shouldn't always just flat. Maybe this hand can do some other things, you know, maybe you can induce it even or go all in, you know, like, because intuitively, like a lot of the strategies that people were playing back then were pretty passive with a lot of the suited Broadway, suited aces kind of stuff. It was pretty passive, I would say. But when these preflop solvers came like Monker, people started to understand that a lot of good things actually happen when you shove Jack 10 suited in that spot. Like if you can shove Jack 10 suited and they will fold Ace Jack off, Ace 10 off, King 10 off, King Jack off, Queen Jack off, and Queen 10 off. If they can fold like infinite combos that dominates you, plus a bunch of combos that don't dominate you, but that just beat you, and you can actually get folds from these hands and not playing post flop, maybe that's better than just taking a flop just because your hand is pretty, you know? So it was kind of a shift in strategies for MTTs during this time, I feel like, where, yeah, people started to understand that these pretty hands are actually pretty good all-in hands as well. Yeah, so I think my game shifted a lot in that sense. Prebz was also playing way more aggressive than I was. I came from like a cash game, like kind of an old school cash game mindset where I was playing very, if I had a good hand, I would like play strong because people would just pay you off. Back in the day, like a lot of your EV just came from making strong hands and getting paid by the fish. Like you wouldn't necessarily, yeah, at least that was never my strategy, like redlining a lot. I was just blue lining and making like infinite BB per 100, just flopping sets and getting paid by the fish. That was like kind of how you did it back then. So I had to like kind of reshape my strategy towards playing a bit more aggressive as well and being a bit more taking some unintuitive bluffs, like no, like zero equity bluffs, like, yeah, random tripling off with like ace 3 suited on like queen 10, 8, 7, stuff like this, you know? Stuff that wasn't very intuitive and had never been part of my game before. I started seeing that Prebz and yeah, some other people, but I'm gonna give big shout out to him because I feel like I learned a lot from him during these COVID years. That he was playing like very aggressive in a pretty different style than what I was playing. So yeah, using Monker solver a lot and Pio solver a lot and being in lockdown a lot helped, I would say, quite a bit.
So for the people who want to become a good poker player, we have to wait for the next pandemic, basically.
Yeah, or at least like you can pretend there's a pandemic, you know, you can just decide that there's a pandemic now. I'm just gonna stay inside. I'm not gonna FOMO into every live stop and I'm not gonna party during the weekends. I'm not gonna do all these things, you know. You can just decide that if poker is your priority and you really want to go for it, you have to make some sacrifices. And some of these live stops, they're very tempting because you can go there and play like a super soft 1K with like a million up top. But there is expenses and there is time cost and there is jet lag cost and there is a lot of things that people don't really consider with these live stops. So for me, the pandemic was yeah, very good for this. But yeah, now it's a very different climate as well, right? If you really want to get super good, you don't have to rent some supercomputer server in Germany and run like Monker Sims like that costs infinite time and money to build and run. You can basically subscribe to GTOWizard or any other like online library, right? Where you have ICM Sims, you have heads-up sims, you have sims for everything, pre-flop, post-flop. Like back then, it was so hard like to study all these spots. Either you had to buy sim libraries, which I think one of the services we bought from, I think it was like 10K US for like a big sim package, like a big pre-flop library from Anker. I think it was 10K US. It was some like ludicrous amount of money for the sim library. So you could either do that, or you could learn how to build the sims yourself, spend like infinite hours and rent supercomputers to actually run the solves. But it's not easy. Very time consuming, very expensive. Now it's like you subscribe, you click through. It's like super quick, super easy. I don't know, like now it seems like if you really like, I don't want to say it's easier now because of course everyone has these tools available. So the game is much tougher, of course, because everyone is doing this now. Everyone who's trying has access to these tools, and the competition is just getting tougher and tougher, which is like, yeah, of course, always happening, not only in poker, but in every sport, in every game. People's capabilities go up, not down. So of course, but if you really want to go for it now, yeah, it seems like, yeah, the options
Easier and
are
harder
there,
at the
and
same
it's
time.
easier and harder for sure. Yeah.
So how do you think, you know, in the past it was renting a supercomputer and having it run infinite sims 24 hours a day? What is the best way to gain an edge nowadays?
I mean, I'm going to be biased here because I'm sponsored by GTOWizard.
Hey, we're also sponsored
But
by GTOWizard, so we can make this a very biased podcast, no problem.
reminds me I should be wearing a patch actually. Oh, okay. Anyways, we'll do that in post editing. Put a patch on me in post editing. Yeah, no, I think like using solutions like this where I think there are different ways. Like I think there are like a few different ways that you can really improve your game. I would say one is to every time you're playing poker, just use Giazo or any like screenshot service. Just screenshot a bunch of the hands where you're unsure. Look them up in GTOWizard after playing. See if the computer agrees with you or not. That's one way to do it. I think that's very good because especially if you play like a big spot yourself, that spot is going to be easier to remember, and like the solution is going to be easier to remember because you have some emotional attachment to the hand and the spot, right? If it was like a big final table spot or whatever, it's going to be quite easy to remember that solution because it means quite a bit to you, right? Second option is playing versus a trainer. Just set up a spot that you want to get better at. Low jack versus cutoff, single raise pot, 30 big blinds. Just play like infinite hands and look for patterns. Establish like pattern recognition for different spots. Try to understand why the solver wants to check range on this board and bet range on that board and whatever. Look for sizings. What's the most frequent sizings? And third is to watch footage of great players. Watch Triton or high roller final tables online, or stuff like that, where you can see the whole cards and you can actually see what these very good players are doing. And if you disagree, if you saw Chidwick make a play at the Triton 100K and you think it's a bad play, you can just go into GTOWizard, open a ICM sim, like find a similar solution and see, okay, am I stupid or is Chidwick stupid, you know? Or yeah. So I think like there's different ways to study game now, and I think like using all of these ways is probably necessary to become very good. I think like they all have their yeah, advantages and disadvantages. Yeah.
It's easy to get overwhelmed because poker is so complex. How do you, like, I agree with everything you just said. They're all very valuable tools. How does one prioritize what to study? Yeah, you mentioned, for example, you can open up a drill, certain spot. How do you determine what is most important, and do you have any advice for our audience?
Usually for me, it's just like if I repetitively find myself in a spot in game where I'm like, I have no clue what to do here. Like I have absolutely no clue what to do. I usually make a note of that. That's just like reminder, like I write a note, remember to study this spot. And then just I go drill it for X amount of hands till I feel more confident about the spot, right? I think that's probably the best way to do it, because it's not like one thing that people should study. It's different. Like some people are really good at heads up, some people are really good shorthanded, some people are really good with ICM, some people are really bad at like close to bubble scenarios. For me, for example, I feel like one of my weaknesses right now is playing bubble scenarios or getting close to the bubble, like how aggro can I be as chip leader? How passive do I need to be as mid stack? How careful do I need to be as short stack? You know, stuff like this where I'm feeling a bit insecure about these spots. So I'm gonna spend like the next study sessions like looking a bit more into these spots. But that's different from person to person, right? Like what are you good at? What are you bad at? And just being vulnerable and like just being like honest with yourself that like you don't know every spot because no one does. Maybe Mikita, but outside of him, no one does. So just being honest about that and like finding, finding the spots where you're weak and drilling those.
What do you think are your strengths?
Probably the emotional disconnect that I spoke about earlier, that I don't really get flustered. I don't get tilted. I don't, yeah, I'm not emotionally attached. Like I can be I can be emotionally attached if I fuck up a hand. Like if I'm in a big final table and I do something stupid or whatever, I can be like disappointed. But I never like, yeah, I'm never like very emotional, you know. I never slam the keyboard and like curse or like, yeah, it's gonna be fine.
And basically,
We're
this allows
playing
you
a game.
to. This basically allows you to access the poker theoretical knowledge that you have to like at a high frequency.
Of course. Like if your brain is gonna go into like hyperdrive, like stressing about like the bad beat that you just took or whatever it is, you know, like something that you remember that you have to do, like this email that you have to reply to or whatever. This fly is driving me crazy. If you're gonna let your brain like mess with you when you're playing because you have all these other things, like right now, I have a lot of stuff on my mind, but when I'm playing poker, I still feel like I can be disconnected from these things and like focus on the game. So I think that's probably like a big thing.
Do you do anything like pre-session to do you like remind yourself the points that you're focused on, or do you kind of say like, okay, these are the things that are in my mind on my to-do list, let me park those? I remember I used to do actually a lot of visualizing before my session, and I think it was Elliot Rowe in one of his visualizations where he made you imagine a safe, and you would open the safe and you would put the stuff in that was in your head, and then you would close the safe and you would look at them later. But during right now, you're going to play poker. And actually, for me personally, I'm a very visual person. Like visualization really works a lot for me. For me, that really helped. Do you have any way of like when, especially when you have a lot of stuff in your head, but hey, Scoop doesn't care that you have a lot of stuff in your head. It's going to start right now. How do you best prepare?
No, I don't have a safe where I put my stuff. That sounds like a cool technique though. No, I usually just have to-do lists. I guess it's like kind of a safe where I put everything that's on my mind in to-do lists. Like I set this I need to do on this date and that date, reply to this email, transfer this money, whatever it is, you know, like do these things, and I have it in a to-do list. So I don't have them like circulating in my head. And as long as I have them, I can like park them in my to-do list and then focus on what I need to do. I think that's been like a big help for me, to-do lists for sure.
Many players, I mean, you talked a lot about GTO. Obviously, exploitation, very big part of the game. Many players now, they struggle to find like the balance between GTO and exploitive play. How do you navigate the balance between implementing GTO play while staying in the lookout for possible exploits on your opponents?
I would say I'm not maybe the right guy to ask. I'm not very good at it, I would say. Yeah, in terms of strengths in my game, this is probably one of my weaknesses in my game, I would say, that I'm not like constantly on the lookout for exploits and stuff like that. It used to be a much bigger part of my game, I would say. Well, naturally, before solvers, when I was playing heads up, it was all about exploiting, right? You were just like trying to figure out what was he doing and try to come up with counter strategies. Now I've been like, I would say I've been a bit too GTO oriented probably in a lot of spots. So I think that's going to be maybe my main focus. Maybe not so much for Scoop. Maybe try to play kind of theoretical during Scoop, but especially for WSOP, where I'm going after Scoop, it's a big thing, right? Like actually paying attention to what's going on there and how can we exploit these people? It's a big, big thing, right? And it's also much easier live, I would say, than online, especially if you're playing a lot of tables. It's not so easy to come up with these clever exploits. While if you're playing at a live game and you have a lot of time to figure people out and think about counter strategies, it's a bit easier for me at least. But yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a good person to ask about this. It's not really a strength of mine, I would say.
Well, let me ask you a question that I'm sure is up your street. Playing poker a lot is very demanding on the body, right? We do a lot of sitting. I know you're very big into exercise, health. Do you have any exercise tips for poker players to make sitting on a chair a bit less detrimental for your body or a bit more comfortable, I guess?
Well, I'm like that weird guy when I play live poker that stands up a lot. I do a lot of stretching next to the table, walk around for a bit, you know, like move around, just like not sit for 2 hours straight between breaks and then like walk in the breaks, okay, but like sitting for 2 hours straight, like I don't think that's particularly good. In general, I would say just like cheat code to healthier body is walking more in general, being outside and walking. I'm a big proponent, big fan of that. In terms of what exercises to do, of course, like there are a bunch of exercises that you can just like desk sitting exercises that you can Google, stuff that you can doing while you're sitting or in 5-minute breaks, like stuff that opens up like your shoulders or your lower body or whatever. There's like easy stuff you can do to negate the fact that we are sitting that much. Of course, I think like the best option is to not always sit when you're playing as well. If you have like a standing desk or a treadmill desk or anything like this, and like actually vary the position that you're in, like sit for an hour, stand for 2 hours, sit for an hour, stuff like this is very helpful. I don't have that now because we're in an Airbnb and there's limited customizability. I don't really want to spend too much time in investing in like a setup for a place where I'm going to be for 1 month.
You do have a nice
but-
chair. Did you buy that online or was it already there?
This one, actually, I bought one. This is actually a chair that Landon Tice brought over yesterday. He bought like a bunch of monitors and chairs because there was like another group of poker players here in Vancouver that were moving and they had like a bunch of chairs and monitors that they were just offloading because they were leaving. So we got kind of like a bulk discount deal for that, but it's not a particularly nice one. It's an okay one. It's not.
No, but yeah, but
Yeah.
I can guess like you're currently in Vancouver to play the Scoop. I can imagine that if you're gonna sit there for a month, that at least you know you would go online and buy at least a decent chair. Like I understand that you're not gonna buy a standing desk, right?
Yeah. I like if I buy an office setup for myself at home now, like I am just about to do that to set up a new office. There, I will of course have like standing desk and Herman Miller Iron, which is my favorite chair. Like an actually good office chair and an actually good desk ergonomic setup. I think is like super important. Like actually thinking about the height of your monitor and like all of these small things. Yeah, I love geeking out on that shit. So
I also
and
saw.
think
I think it was on your Instagram. You were also excited to geek out on your bedroom, right?
Yeah, that's like the most tilting part when you live in Airbnbs all the time, actually. Now I've been homeless for 14 months. I've just been traveling from hotel to Airbnb to hotel to Airbnb, which also probably hasn't helped with my stress levels and anxiety levels at all. I would think that's like part of it as well, that you're like always, you know, that next week you have to pack your shit and go to a new place. You have to book flight tickets, apply for a visa, like all these things always. Yeah, I think that's like pretty toxic way to live, to be fair. So I can't wait now to not be homeless anymore. Yeah, what was I answering? I
Yeah,
keep
because
ranting about random
for
stuff.
for maybe to give us some perspective, I saw on Instagram you bought a place in Dubai, if I'm not mistaken, that you were gonna spend some time in.
Yeah.
And I remember I saw specifically one post where you really want to geek out on your bedroom, like, oh, I'm gonna optimize temperature, the most comfy bed in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, because like, oh yeah, that's where we were, right? So at all these Airbnbs, there's always something. Like either the air condition doesn't work or there's like construction work outside, like there is here now. You wake up like 6, 7 in the morning and it's like hammering. They're like destroying a bridge right outside of where we live. There's always like sunlight coming in because the curtains are dog shit. There's always like something like this, you know, that's tilting when you're traveling. So just having those things in place as well, having those things in place and an ergonomic setup for studying, playing, all these things. Can't wait.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've done a little bit of traveling earlier in my career as well. Yeah, it definitely was a very stressful time for also the things that you described. Or internet was shit, and I was tilting because of that. Also, I had financial, like I explained earlier, I was not in a great financial situation. Spending money, everything was expensive. Oh no, and I had such a high need to kind of settle down. And I remember once I finally settled down, that's also when I grinded everything back, right? Just like every day have a routine, you know. Oh yeah, no, I can definitely feel you, man. I'm sure it's gonna help a lot. Any you have been homeless, you said, for 14 months, traveling a lot. Any travel hacks for the audience? And maybe also, do you have maybe jet lag hacks that would maybe also come in handy? So travel hacks, jet lag hacks.
Not really. I'm not really like like I do optimize some things for traveling in terms of jet lag and stuff, but I don't really use melatonin. I know a lot of people are fans of that to kind of like yeah, force yourself to sleep when you arrive in a time zone where you're not used to sleeping. But I'm more bullish on just trying to adjust your time zone before you leave, if it's possible, to like adjust your sleep schedule so you will like move towards the sleep schedule you want to be in the place you're going to be arriving, like a week before you go or something like that. If you have the option to do that, not always you can, of course, do that. But yeah, I think that's a better option than using melatonin or stuff like that, for me personally, at least. For travel hacks in general, I don't know. The hack is to travel less, I would say. I'm just so over it right now.
Hi guys, Rene aka the Wacko here with a quick Mechanics of Poker 2.0 announcement. In our program you will get access to 80 plus hours of content in which we will explain you all aspects needed in order to become a more successful poker player. Now one of these of course is the technical aspect of the game, in which I'll be explaining you all the mechanics behind poker strategies. We'll be talking about GTO, exploitative play, with an extra focus on the why behind certain strategies and why the population has certain leaks. And to increase your win rate even further, we've recently added a river bluff and bluff catching section so you can increase your EV when those pots become very big. Our mindset and performance coach Adam Carmichael, he took care of the mental game and performance section of this program, in which he will teach you everything you need to know in order to break through limiting beliefs, better handle your emotions, break free from tilt, and play your A game more consistently. And last but not least, we've added the management and optimization section in the program, in which we will give you various tips and tricks to make it more likely for your poker career to succeed, and how to continuously improve as a poker player. Now on top of that, this concept is continuously evolving based on feedback and suggestions we get from our community. Next to all this content, you will have access to our exclusive Discord community, monthly live Q&A calls, and one-on-one coaching session in which we are going to be reviewing if you have been implementing the stuff that we teach you in the Mechanics of Poker correctly. So do you think you have what it takes to master the mechanics of poker? Go over to mechanicsofpoker.com and maybe you will get a chance to work with me and Adam and make more progress in your poker career. But for now, without further ado, let's get back into more goodness in today's episode.
Yeah,
Adam, I know
travel
you
less.
live in Bali. It's not in a very easy place to travel to other places? I think any flight is, for example, a flight, you're originally from the UK. How long does it take to get to the UK? Like 20-hour flight or something?
18 hours on a good flight, 20 hours on average. And yeah, I live probably 3 hours away from the nearest other places, which would be Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, and Australia. And yeah, I agree with Espen's travel hack of travel less if you want to kind of feel good. I mean, there's trade-offs. Obviously, traveling's amazing, seeing new places, and you got to get that kind of blend right for yourself. But you sacrifice routine, you sacrifice feeling good on your schedule, you sacrifice home comforts of just waking up in the same bed and things that most people would take for granted. So yeah, I haven't done any like long traveling. I do like little travel breaks every 6 weeks, every 2 months I go somewhere new, but I haven't like kind of lived in a kind of out of a suitcase, so to speak. So I can't really relate to the stresses you guys are experiencing. All I can think of is that would be stressful for me if I was constantly on the go. And then I think it's just trying to find routines. So actually, a good question to ask you, Espen, is how do you find routines when you come to a new place? Because if you're traveling all the time, my initial thought would be, okay, I want to get on a schedule, get on a morning routine. That's changing all the time based on the time zone, whether you're playing live, whether you're playing online. What are some of the things you prioritize when you go to a new place and things that are important for your routine overall?
Yeah, I mean, routine is such a big thing if you're gonna thrive in any environment, I think, like being in a good routine. Usually when I get to a new place, I try to find like where is the nearest gym that I can use, like a good gym, where is the nearest place I can get healthy food. I buy like some basic stuff that I can have to get my protein needs met and get my, yeah, like when we came to Vancouver, for example, we found like a really nice salad place that's close to here. We go there every day, buy a couple of salads, so we have that. I make overnight oats at home, so I have that ready always in the fridge. Bought like protein powder and all of that, so I have that ready, protein bars. Just try to optimize everything so you have healthy options available. Yeah, and like as soon as you get there, try to force yourself to wake up at the hour that you want to be waking up, so you like get into the right sleep schedule ahead of time. Like Scoop starts in 2 days. It's the 3rd of May today when we're recording, so Scoop is about to start being in a good sleep schedule for that. So I'm ready to wake up to play Scoop, so I don't have to like the first 4 days of Scoop waking up like jet lagged, tired. This is why I came here as early as I did as well, to get into routine before an important event like Scoop starts, you know. So it's just like a bit of planning and a bit of, yeah, I don't really have any big hacks. Just try to find like healthy stuff near to you. I think like, yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the only person who prioritizes finding the gym. Every time I go traveling, I always go, where's the gym? And I'm always like trying to find a sweet spot where I can find a nice hotel near a decent gym. But yeah, I think it's important just to just get the normal things going, like in line with your circadian rhythm, good foods, somewhere to exercise, and just trying to create a nice rhythm in an environment where everything's new. And I think some people struggle when they lose their normal routine to create a new one. Like they'll go traveling and then they'll just throw everything out the window and kind of freestyle it, where other people like yourself are very professional, understand wherever you are, routine's important. Let's do the basic things well. Let's find some good restaurants or good cafes where I can go to for food and yeah, all those kind of things. Yeah, it sounds like you do enough of a good job on that one. So I want to transition now into doing some reflecting on your career. And there's a great quote by Jim Carrey that says, "I wish everyone would get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that's not the answer." And for you, I think you might have experienced this yourself. And I want to ask you, what is your definition of success?
Yeah, tough one for sure. I guess success is when you're happy, content, thriving. Yeah, it's going to be different for so many people, and it's been different for me so many times throughout my life, right? What is success? Like at some point, success was losing weight. At some point, success was finishing my master's degree, win a big tournament, yeah, help my family out. It's been a lot of different things, and I don't think there's one answer. It depends on your situation, but for me right now, like the next big goal for me and the success for me would be to be happier and healthier. Health would be a big thing for me now. Like, I know you're a big guy into this. I follow you on Instagram, and you post like a lot of workout content, and you're really hard on the gym grind. I've been less hard on the gym grind lately because of this episode that I had in Bali. After that, I was struggling to go to the gym. The doctors told me to not go to the gym for a while. And I know you're tracking health metrics as well. I think you're using the same thing as me, like a Whoop band. Yeah, so I'm tracking everything in Whoop, and I see my health metrics are still screwed after that Bali episode, and that is now 2.5 months ago almost. My resting heart rate right before that episode was like 40, 42, around there. Now it's 55 up to 60, so quite a lot higher. My HRV was like above 100, like peaked at like 117 or something like that. Now it's consistently like 30, maybe 40. So I don't know, something's going on. My body is not too happy with what I'm doing right now. So success for me now would be to get back to where I was in terms of health, happiness, stress levels, anxiety levels, all of this. Just feel better in my own skin again. Feel better. Like, I just don't feel that good right now, and it's really not a good place to
great
be, I'd
answer.
say.
Yeah, I really like the answer there because it went kind of deep into kind of all the facets of being a human and trying to live a good life. And I think a lot of us in early life in particular link success to achievement. If someone asked me in my 20s what success was, I'd tell them all the things I wanted to achieve, and that was success. And then you start having some achievements and you're like, yeah, nice, but that's not really, if I've got loads of outward success, but I'm not internally happy, is that success? And you very quickly go, it's not. So happiness starts to overtake achievements. And then health, if health gets sacrificed at any moment, or you get sick, or you can't do what you want in life, you very quickly go, health actually goes pretty close to the top, if not the top as well. So you end up like a hierarchy of happiness and health right at the top. And then achievements come like somewhere underneath. And I think it's, obviously we're complicated people on this planet trying to do many things at once. But I think when you come to that realization, okay, I want to be happy, I want to be healthy, other things I'm doing in alignment, or move me towards that. I think we can't get to kind of perfectionist based. We need to realize we're making steps, but not perfect steps. And am I trending towards being more happy and being more healthy? That's kind of what I kind of do in my life. Am I trending towards a happier, healthy version of myself over time? If the answer is yes, where can I improve? And yeah, for your health metrics, they're very extreme changes. So if anyone who tracks their resting heart rate or HRV, you'll see generally they drop. Heart rate drops when you're under stress or fatigued. So the heart rate rises, and HRV drops. So yours are very significant because heart rate generally doesn't change too much. So my heart rate's generally around 48, 50. It doesn't change unless I get COVID or something extreme. Your change is like really extreme at 15. So what that generally represents is either overtraining, if you're kind of doing a lot of physical stuff, but often like stressing the system and kind of being stuck on that kind of sympathetic mode, which is generally very activated. And it doesn't necessarily need to be that you're doing stuff, but like internal, like in the body. There's a very good book called The Body Keeps Score, which kind of goes into trauma, but also goes into stress. And it talks about like, you can't cheat the body. The body is always noting what stresses are going on in your environment. And if it's flagged some things as these are important, stressful, and it's holding on to those, your health metrics will kind of suffer as a result. So yeah, yours are pretty extreme. So yeah, I'm very interested to hear how that changes over time. Obviously, there's going to be some correcting to do in terms of lifestyle stuff. Maybe getting into a stable routine in Dubai or your new place could help to get that comfort. Maybe your body feels a little bit on edge right now, and that's why you're experiencing not quite feeling your best right now. But yeah, super interesting. I think anyone would benefit from doing some sort of tracking of their health metrics just to gain self-awareness on what your baseline looks like, and then when things change, how that affects it. So for you, have you noticed since that event in Bali, have you noticed your day-to-day experience been any different? Like, do you feel different in your body since then? Any kind of physical changes you've noticed as a result of that?
Yeah, I feel different for sure. I feel worse. I just feel worse. I feel like my pulse is more erratic, some heart arrhythmia, I guess. Like my pulse sometimes just goes very high and then it comes back down. Maybe especially when I'm working out, especially some exercises that somehow affects it a lot. maybe it disrupts my breathing in some way where it stresses my heart or whatever. So I have some breathing stuff that's going on. And all of this maybe gives me some anxiety as well, like feeling that maybe I'm not okay. I removed quite a bit of that anxiety because I went to doctors in Bali when I was there. I went in South Korea when I was there last month now. Did like all the checks that you could do, like EKG and like a 24-hour monitor. And I did like stress tests and I did like scanned it like an X-ray thing. Did everything. Everything came back clean. So I should be fine. I think it's honestly, I think it's mental. And I think my body is just signaling that I need to slow down a little bit or not
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the main thing is get everything checked out so you feel that peace of mind and also that there isn't any underlying health issue. And then, yeah, over time, you'll make the corrections to your routines and your overall stress to kind of lower those things. Yeah, hopefully it's trending in the right direction over time. And yeah, it sounds like you're being more mindful of it, which I think will also help. So I want to transition to a few questions on looking back on your career. And what do you think is the one thing you would have wanted to know about poker when you started out? So you've had two starts. You started in 2004 and you started again in 2017. Starting out maybe on both those journeys, what do you wish you had known sooner?
Well, for the first one, I would say I wish I would have known how hard it was going to get. How privileged we were to be in that spot to play these incredibly soft games that early on and be a bit more mature to take advantage of it. That would be the first thing. When I came back to poker in 2017, what I wish I knew then. Good question. Honestly, I was so lucky in that spot because I was surrounded by very good people who guided me. I just watched your pod with European over the last couple of days here, and I think that one was also a lot of stuff that really like spoke to me in a sense where he said what helped him the most in his career was the people that he was surrounded with, and that is 100% the case for me as well. Like a lot of my success is just due to my network and how I've been surrounded by really good people and learned a lot from them and gotten a lot of both knowledge and motivation from the people that I've surrounded myself with. So in terms of what I wish I knew, I don't have a good one for this in 2017, honestly, because I feel like I don't think I would change much, honestly, from the path that I did. Maybe have a bit more balance. But again, if I had the balance, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So maybe I didn't need balance. Maybe I needed to be on this kind of selfish journey where I was focusing on myself and poker. And I don't know, it's hard to look back at these things and say, oh, I should have done that differently because everything would be different, right? And yeah, no, I'm quite happy with the journey that I went on for the last few years. I wouldn't change anything really.
Yeah, I love that. And I think sometimes we'll get to an end point and you can look back, and once you look back, you realize everything kind of had to happen in the way it did to get to where you are. So it's kind of a trick question to go, what would you kind of change? Because if you change something, everything kind of skews in a different direction. But it's one of those things where you can also go, if I wanted to get to where I am quicker, what would I have done differently on that path? For you, like from 2017, things went really well in terms of how you applied yourself. So the lesson probably was, I'm on the right path. It's going to get good over time. Just commit to the path sort of thing. So yeah, maybe there wasn't anything major on that path. All right, so the next question is, what's one thing your poker career has brought you that you didn't expect it to start now?
Well, outside of the financial position that I am now, which is better than I could have hoped for, of course. Yeah, I don't know, like also a very hard one to answer. Like I'm obviously in like a way better financial position than I hoped for or that I was planning to be in. Like tournament poker is very random like this. Suddenly you just win a big tournament for infinite buy-ins at the top of your buy-in level, and yeah, it's just so random, right? So there's not really I don't think there goes much planning into that. Like before the main event, I had, yeah, it was more like a steady grind, you know. I had like some big tournament scores, but nothing remotely close to the main event win. So I don't know. Tournament poker is random. Trying to plan anything in tournament poker is kind of futile, I think. Like there's a lot of players that are way better than me at poker that have had way less success, you know, and that's just how tournament poker works. There are some people that are just at the top of the variance curve who's gonna outperform almost everyone because they're just at the top of that curve, right? And there's people that are working super hard, that are super good at poker, that just never has that breakthrough, that are just like in makeup forever. Worst case scenario, just in makeup forever. It happens, right? It's crazy. Like, recommend everyone go read Fooled by Randomness by Nassim Taleb. Like, that book
Yes.
is very good at explaining what I'm trying to explain now very incoherently about this game we're playing, where people attribute a lot to hard work and intelligence or skill or talent or whatever. People attribute a lot to that, and in the end there's a lot of randomness. And yeah, you just have to be grateful that you're for me, for example, I just have to be humble and grateful to be where I am right now, and realize that it's not because I'm so much fucking smarter or that I worked so much harder than these other guys. It's probably just I was, yeah, lucky enough to be around really good people, lucky enough to win those 5 last important coin flips in a main event, lucky enough to whatever, you know. It's, yeah, it's all, yeah, a lot of luck in this world. And yeah, I guess poker has made me realize that to a very high degree than, yeah, before.
That's a good one. That's a good one. How much luck plays a role in success. It's interesting. I remember listening to Tim Ferriss getting interviewed, and he had the #1 podcast at that time. And they said, "Oh, how have you built the biggest podcast in the business space this time?" And he said, "I got lucky." And I was like, "Got lucky?" I was like, "He's really good at what he does." And his first response was, "I got lucky, right place, right time, met the right people." And I think like we don't understand like how much like circumstances are very fortunate, favored, or malleable, and lots of things need to happen for an event to unfold. But on the flip side, you've got to meet kind of luck halfway. You've got to always put yourself in the situations, always put the work in, take action. So it goes back to that kind of manifestation question or topic we had earlier, where thinking about having something or thinking about creating something is only a piece of the puzzle. Same with luck, it's only a piece of the puzzle. You've also got to take the actions to put yourself in those situations. So people who take a lot of action get very lucky. People who are good at what they do get very lucky. Why is it? They're always in situations where kind of luck can favor them to some degree. But on the flip side, as you mentioned, don't get fooled by randomness. There's a lot of luck involved. If you're the guy who's on the top end of the variance curve and you get all the success, then yeah, you've got to factor in that luck was in your favor. And yeah, it's going to happen in all avenues. Obviously, MTTs is the biggest kind of poker format to show that that is the case. Other formats have less of a kind of luck factor in them. MTTs have a massive one. But yeah, I think it's a really good one. Yeah, Fooled by Randomness. I really enjoyed that book to kind of dispel connotations of what skill is, and yeah, basically not glorifying the people at the top of the kind of pyramid, so to speak, because a lot of factors go into that which are kind of out of your control. All right, final question from me is, what was the most enjoyable period of your poker career, and what made it so much fun?
I guess I have a couple of ones that stand out. I think my first like big-ish online score was very memorable. I won like a 5K WPT online. It wasn't like even a big field. It was like 200 entry field, but I won it for like 200K. But I won it during COVID, living in a grindhouse, and we had some friends visiting as well. So it was like and everyone in the house had action in my tournament. So it was like a very big group feeling, you know, like everyone was celebrating. We were out in the garden after the tournament, smoking cigars, drinking whiskey. Like we had like a big campfire. It was like a sick evening. And like I remember the feelings, just how happy, like relaxed, happy. It was just like one of the best feelings ever. That one stands out, very memorable. Winning the tag team event in Vegas with pads, very memorable. I would maybe even say that was, I don't want to say it was more memorable than winning the main event, but the main event win was almost a bit too much in a sense where it was overwhelming, you know, like you couldn't really maybe comprehend it fully, or like there was so much going on, like media attention and like all these things, you know, like your head is kind of everywhere. While after the tag team event, it was like, oh, it wasn't even it wasn't life-changing money, you know, like it was like $500 buy-ins. We won like 70K each or whatever. But the feeling after that tournament was like very profound and like very enjoyable moment to win it with a good friend, you know, and like, I don't know, that was fun. So I guess those two ones in poker are like the ones that stand out, I guess.
Yeah, it goes back to how much we enjoy being connected with the people. So for you, like you had the personal success of the main events, but then you had the kind of one where you won the tournament with all your friends were involved in your action. That felt like more connected, more better. The same with the one with pads. There's an element of sharing success that's kind of underrated. There's like, some would say it's lonely at the top. It can be lonely at the top, like when you're climbing pursuits, but also like if you've got the people around you to share the experiences, that's going to make a big difference on how success feels for you as you arrive there. I think for you, you've had a very kind of rounded experience of both extremes of what it's like to be the top of the mountain by yourself and also with other people. And yeah, it's really, really interesting to hear you speak about those experiences. All right, over to you, Rene. What's been some happy moments in your career? Any kind of peak moments where you felt like this is what poker's all about? This is the kind of the dream I'm meant to be living.
I would say it's like, obviously I don't play tournaments, so I don't have like one moment that I can stand out like that. So I would just say when I was trying to get to the top, and I was sharing an office with some other guys, and we were all like every day trying to get better, and try to get to the top. And then eventually, you know, we did arrive, not at the top, right? Linus is just too good. But you know, we arrived at the top segment, and then just that journey and like that excitement for the game, and being that busy with like strategies and trying to exploit your opponents, finding leaks going into the games, exploiting those leaks, going back to the lab, back to the game, just that whole process day in, day out. I would say just that grind, I would say that's the most, that's my most enjoyable experience in poker. And that's actually something that I struggle with nowadays because I have multiple things going on. I cannot get, like, I still play some poker, but it's almost like torture for me, I would say. Basically, I'm torturing myself by playing a little bit of poker because it's like, I don't get, it's almost like I cannot win, because if I win a session or if I play well, I'm like, yeah, okay. But then when I lose a session or when I make mistakes, I'm like, fuck, this is where I want to go fully into it. But then, you know, you have other things going on, other commitments. So I would say, yeah, if poker for me is most enjoyable when you're really trying to get good at it, I would say. That's when it's most enjoyable for me.
For sure. I agree completely with this. Like the journey is the whole thing. That's why I enjoyed the COVID years so much as well. We were just like, we were there, you know, like in the trenches, grinding, like in the solver every day, you know, like that journey is big. And yeah.
And I guess
Love
also
that
with like the
process.
sharing, right? You were there with you were not doing it alone. I was not doing it alone. I had like my partners in crime, sort of, right? We were talking strategy every day. And nowadays, also when I do strategy, it's a bit more lonely. Obviously, I still do calls with people maybe online, but it's not the same that if every day, you know, you walk into the office and then you're excited for a guy to walk in because you found something and you want to show him, you know, like, hey, yeah, you arrived. Look, come. Look at this. Look at this. This is exactly that exploit that we talked about. Look, he fell for it. Just that is amazing. Like being working on a project like that.
Sure.
I wanted to actually ask you something. I wanted to know. Yeah, you were talking about that you're not in a great place. Did you, now obviously Scoop WSOP is around the corner, big events, but did you consider skipping them? And if, I mean, apparently not, what made you decide on not to skip them?
It entered my consciousness briefly. But then I thought back to Scoop last year. I was living with Pads here in Vancouver last year as well. and it was like insanely good month. I just loved it. Like the whole, because it's like a team aspect, you know, like we wake up every day, we go to war at the tables. After the grind, we go for a walk, we go eat dinner, we talk about hands. Like this whole thing, I fucking love it. I couldn't miss it. So this month was off the table to skip, for sure. Vegas is a bit more. Yeah, I'll see how I feel in Vegas. I've booked like the whole summer. I'm gonna be there and grind all summer. But if in the middle of it, I feel like, you know what, I'm kind of over it, I will fly out. I'll do something else. But yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Like I'm kind of, at least for these 2 stops, it's quite long periods in one place. I'm spending 6 weeks in Vancouver, 6 weeks in Vegas. That gives me time to unpack my shit, to set up my computer with like a nice monitor, and like to unpack and get into a routine. The worst is if, like, when you're like, before I came here, I was in so I was traveling in Asia all this year. I was in January in Phuket, February in Bali, March in Korea. So I was in Jeju, then I went to Seoul for a little bit, then to Jeju again. Then I went to Tokyo for 3 days. Then I flew from Tokyo to Norway. Then from Norway, I was going to go to Dubai. Dubai was shut down because the airport was flooded. There was like a big flood in Dubai happening, so I couldn't go there. I ended up flying here instead. So it's just like a bit too much, you know, like always flying, always never unpacking, you know. Yeah, it's just too messy. Now at least I'm in one place for a bit extended time, you know, and that feels good. Also just putting in these long grinds, it suits me kind of well. I'm like a routine kind of guy. I don't like shifting things up too much and going from place to place. Yeah, which is incredible that I've chosen to be homeless for the last 15 months, since I don't really enjoy it at all. I don't know how I came to the conclusion that that was a good idea, but I was like, I'm traveling so much anyways. Why do I want to pay like 4K US per month in rent in London for this small apartment when I'm never there anyways, you know? I might as well just cancel that and like just live everywhere. But yeah, it was a very bad decision. I think it's important to have a base so you can have some place where you can unpack your shit and like actually.
Was it maybe also like some sort of fantasy? I think you earlier in the conversation you also talked about FOMO, right? Looking at the live tournaments. Was it maybe also like a little bit of FOMO, like, oh wow, now I binked and I can play all these high rollers? Was it maybe like you kind of looked at this live and imagined it was like more amazing than it actually was, because apparently it's not necessarily suited for you because you're so routine oriented?
Yeah, it's always a struggle back and forth there, if I should play more online, be in one place, or if I should go to all these poker stops. Yeah, I enjoy both, honestly. I enjoy both as long as there's balance and it's not too much. I wouldn't only want to play online and be in one place, but I also wouldn't want to be doing what I'm doing right now. So I just need to find like the middle. Yeah, because I really love doing what I'm doing. I love playing poker. I love traveling, just not as much as I'm doing right now.
We talked a little bit about the luck factor in poker. Now, actually, very often, actually, kind of the advice is no, you're blaming luck while it's actually you are not skilled. How can one, as objectively as possible, observe the luck factor involved in their results, both positive and negative, and how can one become better at that?
I mean, it's very hard, right? You can, of course, do stuff to make sure that you're not just getting lucky. You can review your game. You can hire a coach to look over your game. You can compare you can record your session and compare your stuff that you're doing to a solver. You can do stuff to make sure that you're not just getting lucky, right? But it's hard to say, like, how lucky are you getting? Like, because you can't even just look at like your BB per 100 or your ROI or whatever. Like if you have like massive samples, it works to some degree, but especially like it's better for cash games, obviously, than tournaments, right? Because even in tournaments, like you can have a positive BB per 100, but you're like clueless with ICM, you're gonna struggle. And I don't know, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to review that stuff. I kind of just think you have to accept that it's a big part of the game and just focus on the stuff that you can control, which is how good you're playing, how well rested you are going into every session, how mentally and physically prepared you are, all of that stuff. Control that stuff and just accept that luck is a big part of what we're doing, especially MTT regs. And yeah, just take the precautions that you can, because you know this luck is so big. Like swap with friends for big tournaments, sell action if you're playing too big. Don't force the action too much and hope for that one big bink, it's because it might not never come. That's the sad part. Like you might just never have that breakout score, which is crazy.
Yeah, I feel like when things are not going well, kind of go through like sort of a checklist. Well, at least, everything that's under my control, at least I'm doing that well. I think you gave some good tips, right? You can send over all, especially if you play online, send over all your data, have a coach look at your game. I think that these are all definitely very valuable pieces of advice. What is the one thing that you struggle the most, or that is the most difficult about being a poker player? What's the
For
hardest
me
thing?
or for most poker people? Because I think that's different. I think for most
Two
people,
answers is fine.
I think for most people, the most difficult part is that you might go to work every day for a year and end up with a negative salary at the end of the year. Just the variance of the game can be like brutal and really crushing for some people. For me, I either because of my resilience or because I've been fortunate to not have too much of the bad variance in my poker career, that's not been a problem for me. I would say the problem for me has I guess the biggest problem for me was strategically getting rid of my old patterns when I came back into poker after being out of poker for a while, because I had a lot of, and I still have some of these things that are so ingrained in my game that I think it would almost be easier coming from scratch and starting working with solvers, knowing nothing and just grinding solvers, than trying to get rid of bad patterns that I had in my game from 2007, like all these like super nitty behavior where just like, yeah, very blue line oriented poker. I think it's easier if you start from scratch to become like a good red line player and just play a very good out of line poker, compared to if you have to get rid of like super nitty patterns that are ingrained in your game from way back.
Yeah, I think it's harder to unlearn than to learn from a blank. I think it's easier, for example, if you would
Yeah.
coach someone, if you just get a guy, whose environment is set up, he just finished school, he knows a little bit about poker, but starting now, instead of a guy who's already been grinding 10 years, right? I know you do a lot of reading. You mentioned Food by Randomness. Any other book, or I think you also mentioned podcast a lot, any book or podcast recommendations that had a big impact on your life or on your poker game that you would recommend to our audience?
I think Nassim Taleb has multiple good books that they're right up my alley. At least I know he's kind of a polarizing guy and not everyone loves him or his writing, but I think those books are really good, like Skin in the Game, Fooled by Randomness. One book by Morgan, what is it called? Morgan Housel or something like that, The Psychology of Money. I think that was a good one for poker people. Talked a lot about like how it's kind of easy to make a lot of money, not so easy to keep money, and some of the reasons behind that. And I think it's very, like when I read a couple of those chapters, I could immediately, like, I started thinking about some of my friends that have a bit more like higher risk tolerance than me in poker, maybe, that like to take on a bit more swings than me. I started thinking about, yeah, how it was very applicable. So Psychology of Money, I think, is a good one. Yeah. What else? What else? Yeah, I'll think about it. See if I can come up with something. I wasn't.
Yeah, you can send me a
But-
list. We'll link it in the description down below. Any podcasts? I know you're big on podcasts.
No, not really that are focused on this, I would say. Like right now, what am I even listening to? I've been like listening to a lot of news podcasts lately because the world is in like a weird place right now where there's a lot of stuff going on, like territorial disputes and crazy stuff between different countries and stuff like that. So I kind of tend to get into these, doom scroll Twitter quite a lot and spend a lot of time getting updated on what's going on with that lately, I would say, which is not particularly productive or what people should be doing, of course. I don't know. There's like one health podcast that I like a lot, The Drive by Prioritise. I think that one is very good. Huberman Lab, I'm sure a lot of people know, talks a lot about like health, fitness stuff. Yeah, outside of that, I don't know. Mostly like news stuff, I would say.
Yeah, I think
News
I saw
stuff
the
and like health, fitness.
I think I saw like you recommended. I think the Huberman on alcohol, and then suddenly the whole poker world started listening to that one. And by that time, I already stopped drinking. So, but there was definitely still a lot of new things in there that I wasn't that actually wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
I want to thank you a lot for sharing all this wisdom with our poker audience. What would you like the main takeaway for our audience to be from the conversation that we had today?
Probably that, I don't know, it's a weird one. Because I feel like this conversation has been, I'm in a weird space right now where I'm almost using this conversation as like a therapy session, you know, I'm like airing out like vulnerabilities and talking about like how stressed and anxious I am and whatever. But at the same time, I don't mind talking about these things because I think it can be helpful to people who maybe think that once you have success, once you win a tournament or you reach NL 40K, if you play cash or whatever it is, like whenever you hit these milestones or have these successes in poker, everything is going to be fine and you're going to be so happy. And life isn't really like that, you know. It's not like a straight line thing, and it's not. I think a lot of people have this. What is it called? It's like some bias where you reach your goal and you get depressed after it because part of you thought that you were going to be so happy once you just reach this goal. Once you lose all that weight, once you finish your degree, once you get your job promotion, once you get the relationship that you want, once you get this one thing that you've been wanting, everything's going to be good and you're going to be so happy. And when you get there, you realize that, okay, your struggles are still your struggles. You're still dealing with the same bullshit as before, like, and people get depressed over it. And I don't think this is what's happened to me. Maybe I think my issues is more that I've thrown a lot of balls up into the air without catching. Like I need to just like land a bit some of these projects that I've started to get in a better headspace. But I do think it's important to be honest about these things and to be vulnerable so people see that even if you have maybe from the outside it looks like I should be like the happiest guy ever. I won the main event and like whatever, like playing Tritons now and all this stuff. But I don't know, like everyone has their issues. And I think like if people were a bit more like open and vulnerable and talking openly about these issues, it's a bit more normalized. Because I think a lot of people feel like they're alone with their issues, like maybe they're on a downswing or they're feeling anxious or lonely or whatever it is. Yeah, I feel lonely. I feel anxious. I mean, everyone does. I think normalizing these things is pretty big win for everyone if people don't have to feel alone with these problems. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like this podcast today was a bit incoherent in a lot of ways from my side because my head is a bit all over the place. But at least it shows that yeah, I don't have everything figured out either. You know, like even if I have successes in some part of my life, I still have same issues as everyone else. So yeah.
Well, I'm sure it will be very much appreciated. I have actually had comments like in my community about certain podcasts where they actually felt good that the person shared like struggles, because sometimes they almost feel like that they're an imposter trying to make it in poker because, you know, all these guys that have on there are also perfect and they're also great. So I'm sure there's many people listening for who this would be, yeah, very inspiring podcast, maybe in a different way than some of the others, but inspiring nonetheless.
Hopefully, yeah.
Adam, any final question for Espen?
No, I'd like to thank Espen for his time and for being so vulnerable. We appreciate you being very open to us in this conversation and going deep into the challenges you're facing. As you mentioned, like it's very easy from the outside to think at the top it's all rainbows and butterflies and everything feels amazing, but we all go through the ups and downs of life, and you're going through a bit of a cycle to some degree. Yeah, really appreciate you sharing that, and I'm sure the audience will really relate to it because it's so much more relatable to people, because everyone struggles to some degree. Not many people succeed, so when someone's struggling who's also at the top, I think it's super relatable. I think we'll get a lot of really good feedback with people who will feel heard, understood, and be able to relate their problems to your experience. So we appreciate the time you've spent with us today, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, it was almost like I felt before this podcast started. There was like construction outside my house. There was some microphone issues, some tech issues, and part of me felt, fuck, I actually hope this podcast doesn't happen today. Because I almost felt anxious, like going into a podcast, being in like such a messy headspace. But yeah, I'm glad we did it, and yeah, appreciate you having me. I had fun.
I'm glad you followed through. It was a great episode. Great conversation with Espen. Adam, any main takeaways?
Yeah, I think Espen's had a very unique experience at poker, obviously playing a long time, but then having the main event win, which is the ultimate success point for any aspiring poker player. But as we've learned, like it doesn't necessarily create that end of the story, happiness forever kind of moment. And as he was speaking, we could see like the pitfalls of just having success on outcomes. And when I asked him to define success, it very much for him linked more to being happy and being healthy. And right now, obviously, he's going through a bit of a phase where he's not feeling at his best. So he's not feeling the successful version of himself, even though from the outside, he's got those external metrics. So it makes me a reminder to myself, the audience, to always put your happiness, your health, the things that you value as a person at the highest kind of level of your ranking. And yeah, achievements will come and go. We'll go through seasons. They're not going to be linear. You're going to go through some ups and downs. And yes, always going to have that kind of overarching theme of trying to find that balance for yourself, which yeah, Espen's trying to find out. In terms of like some of the real positive skills that I think he's developed, one is his resilience, which he's built over time, and obviously went through a tough childhood, went through a lot of experiences there, which maybe bullying as a child as well through schooling, and that's allowed him to take on adversity and not be affected by it. It was interesting in the questionnaire we wrote, what were your rock bottoms moments? And he wrote like pretty much nothing, pretty smooth line. And then as we spoke, he like lost like 2/3 of his role to crypto. He lost like a massive half his role playing MTTs, and this didn't leave any impression. And for me, that skill set is the ability to reframe, because events happen and then we tell ourselves a story about those events. And that story is going to be good, negative, or neutral. And for him, he just doesn't create negative stories. He doesn't create, that was a bad moment. He goes, okay, lost that, on we go. I think that ability to not create a negative story around things that have happened is a really powerful skill, which allows you to move on from setbacks or reframe a setback as a necessary part of the journey, which I think is a huge one for him. And yeah, I think you mentioned a lot about routine as well. He's a very routine-based guy. Myself, I'm very routine-based. I think all of us have kind of an optimal routine that we can develop, which will help us to perform best at what we're currently trying to do. So always trying to prioritize what you're doing in the morning before you're starting your day. What are the things you do in a simple way that allow you to feel at your best? it's generally not many things. Is it meditation? Is it some exercise? Is it walking your dog? Is it doing some journaling? It's not many things, but you've got to find a way to be consistent with those things over time. I think for Espen, he's feeling a little bit of the lack of routine from all the traveling, because he's not able to create that kind of solid foundation of the things I can do that allow me to feel good as well. So yeah, I think we talked a lot about being lonely as a poker player as well, and the importance of kind of having people on the journey, which I think is really important. But I think a lot of vulnerable things he shared there, which I really appreciate. And yeah, I think a lot of the audience will hopefully be able to relate to his experience and take some positives from that. So it was really good. How about yourself, Rene? What are some of the main things that you wrote down?
Yeah, it kind of sounded to me like he was sort of pulled away from his values by shiny objects. So he won kind of the main event. He maybe in the past, you know, didn't fall for the FOMO of all these live stops, blah, blah. But now suddenly, you know, he won the main event. It was very overwhelming. Suddenly all these opportunities came on his path. He was like, yes, 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 yes. And without reflecting, like, wait, this is actually still in line with my values, right? And now I guess it was mainly his body that was saying like, hey man, it's maybe time to reflect to see if we're living the life that we actually want and if it's in line with what is actually important. So I think if we speak to him again, right, he talked maybe a little about part 2. I think if we speak to him again in like a year or so, I think it will be I feel like it's quite natural, right? The thing that he goes through after you've, like, if you would reflect on the journey, I would say it makes a lot of sense, or at least from the conversation that we had with him, I really understand where he's coming from. He also emphasized a lot on, actually, me and him, when we talked about the most enjoyable moments, we talked about the process oriented, right? We were surrounded by people, right? Teaming up is both most fun and both highest EV, right? He learned a lot when you're with the same people, but it's just way more fun, right? And if you have a lot of fun and if you have a lot of enjoyment in the game, guess what? You will play more, you'll be more consistent, you will have higher volume, you will improve more. So all these positive things come from working in a team. So I would definitely recommend that. I think there's almost no podcast that goes by without someone pointing out the importance of working together with other players. So if you're not doing that, that's probably the first thing on your list. He also talked very much in the beginning, I think we talked about high fields, especially soft fields, that we have to realize that, for example, when the solver says a certain shove, I think pre-flop, right, we talked about this only like basically break even slightly winning. If in the future, I think we talked about Texas, the guy from Texas, right? Shout out to the guy from Texas. If he's gonna hand your stack, very likely to hand your stack next hand, then maybe you should pass on that shove. Or he said in more tough fields, yeah, like there's not gonna be a great spot next hand, right? Because everyone is gonna play solid. So even a slightly plus EV spot is something that should be taken. So take future EV in consideration. Also, for example, if you play on a tough table, the chances are also that you will get moved again within an hour, for example. So that's something to take in consideration. If there's no high EV spots on your table, but you look around and you see a bunch of grandpas playing cards, right? Then maybe we should just knit it up a little bit on that table, pass up on some marginal EV spots, and wait until we get moved to a different table. So stuff to take in consideration. He also talked about the importance of marking hands, right? He said, Chiazo your spots, go to GTOWizard, look them up. If you see a trend in those spots that you keep on marking, drill them until you basically understand them. And I think this is actually very nice about MTTs. You can watch back all the big final tables. You can watch back the best players. And especially at the final table when ICM is there, you can probably learn a lot, right? And then you can compare it to, hey, are they doing what the solver is doing? And if they deviate, talk about it with your network. Like, hey, why do you think it deviates here? A lot of good ways and a lot of good tips also on that part to improve your game. I want to thank Espen again for being so vulnerable on this podcast and sharing a story. I think it will definitely help a lot of players sharing his story like the way he shared it here today. I want to thank Adam for co-hosting the podcast. I want to thank you guys for listening all the way until the end. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, notifications on, all that good stuff, and I will see you guys in the next episode.